Chapter 23-29. Fight in the life and death arena. You picked the Fighting Dragon Street just for this? As for becoming famous, this young master didn't really believe it. When Han Fei challenged the Tian clan, he was already famous. Of course, this time, he was also famous. But this time, it was not Han Fei who became famous, but Feng Xingliu. Therefore, he was more inclined to believe that Han Fei came to the Fighting Dragon Street to declare war on the heavenly race. So, in order to declare war on the heavenly clan, Han Fei destroyed my Fighting Dragon Street. Hearing Han Fei's explanation, to be honest, the young master felt a little uncomfortable. Han Fei raised his chin. Hey! Who are you? Can you make the decision or not? Or are you also afraid of the heavenly race? The young master suddenly stood up. Afraid of the heavenly race? I suspect you are insulting me. I am the third prince of the divine capital royal family, Kong Xian. Do you think I am afraid of the heavenly race? Han Fei frowned. Oh, fuck, he seems to have a powerful background. The divine capital royal dynasty was the strongest force in the East Sea divine land. The third prince of the strongest force actually came here to be a playboy. But on the road of cultivation, what's the use of this identity? You are the third prince, and I am the fucking human emperor. Am I worse than you? Han Fei immediately raised his head and said, Oh. Third prince. Does the entire Fighting Dragon Street listen to you? Kong Xian said, the Fighting Dragon Street is an island of freedom. Here, everything is free. Han Fei asked, even killing people is free? The corners of Kong Xian's mouth rose. As long as you think you can still leave after killing people, then you can kill them. Han Fei thought, 3 at the peak of the star condensation realm and 18 at the late stage of the star condensation realm, and these were just the resident ones. If Kong Xian shouted, there might be several times more masters coming. So although he broke through the Fighting Dragon Street just now, he didn't kill anyone, which should be the right choice. Although he came to the Fighting Dragon Street to provoke the heavenly race this time, he wasn't crazy enough to court death. In Han Fei's view, he just broke through a street, which was not a death wish. Han Fei said, in this case, hey, are you interested in doing business? Ha! Kong Xian laughed. You've beaten your way through Dolong Street, and you still want to do business with me? Han Fei said matter-of-factly, fighting is fighting, and business is business. He had heard that betting on the life and death arena of the dragon battle dragon would earn him countless resources. You, the third prince, should not be lacking in resources. However, I don't believe that you would complain that you don't have enough resources. I don't believe that you would think that a divine artifact is a hot potato. Han Fei thought, even venerable emperors have to go to the Star Ocean to plunder resources, let alone emperors. Kong Xian narrowed his eyes and suddenly smiled. Han Fei, I know you. He was a person of unknown origins, powerful, and had many divine artifacts on him. Even if you are strong, you should not underestimate the powerhouses of the world, especially Tian clan. As he spoke, Kong Xian said leisurely, you said that you wanted to declare war on the celestial race and wanted to borrow the Battle Dragon Street's life and death arena. But, what right do you have to borrow? You've got to come up with something. Otherwise, do you think you can fight? The Celestials are going to fight you? Han Fei asked, so, you want me to show my identity? Kong Xian shrugged. Even if you want to fight in the Dragon Life and Death Ring, you have to show your identity, right? Do you think the Celestials are going to fight in person just to compete with an independent cultivator? Do you think they don't want to lose face? Kong Xian was full of confidence. Others can't figure out Han Fei's origin, so I'll do it. I'll let you reveal your origin in person in front of countless people on this Dolong Street. As soon as Kong Xian stretched out his hand, an enchanting woman immediately came up with a wine glass and handed it to Kong Xian. He said lightly, it's really interesting to think about it. The Dolong Street has been boring for a long time. Now that you've made such a scene, it's interesting. Han Fei chuckled. If I show my identity and declare war, you'll help me host it? Kang Xian stretched out his hand. Of course not. It's the dragon life and death ring. He was gambling on his family's wealth. After he died, his family's wealth would belong to someone else. You don't have any wealth. Why do you want to fight with them? Just because of your provocation and mockery? You underestimate the Celestials too much, don't you? Kang Xian dared to say what others didn't dare to say. Even if he said the Celestials were thick-skinned, no one would think there was anything wrong with it. Han Fei grinned. My wealth. Although it's not as much as the royal family of the divine capital, it's not nothing. Han Fei flicked his wrist and waved casually, taking out 291 heaven-opening qualification tokens. Then, the gloves on Han Fei's hands floated in the air. You can send someone to investigate my gloves. They are comparable to ultra-quality divine weapons. Then, a red bead appeared on Han Fei's chest, and he smiled faintly. An ultra-quality divine weapon. Feng Yu looked at Han Fei speechlessly as if it was the first time she had met Han Fei. Is little junior brother always so arrogant outside? Why is he so arrogant? Feng Yu couldn't figure it out. The place where Han Fei was raised was just a starting place. There was nothing special about it. It was said that there were only a few heaven-opening realms there. Now, looking at it, one supreme-grade god artifact after another supreme-grade god artifact, wasn't he afraid of losing everything? Or was little junior brother so arrogant because of the void mark in the void temple and eldest senior brother's 3 chances to attack him? Feng Yu couldn't help but look at Feng Qingqing. Is he always so arrogant when he's with you? Feng Qingqing thought for a while and remembered how Han Fei showed off his divine weapons when he challenged He Sha. At that time, she thought Han Fei was a descendant of the main bloodline of a major clan. Feng Qingqing nodded slightly. He's even more arrogant than this. Hey! More than that. I'll raise the stakes. Suddenly, a hoarse voice came from within the steaming flames. The fire phoenix slowly became illusory, and the flames began to shrink. After a while, Feng Xingliu, who was covered in wounds, appeared from the flames. Feng Xingliu said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "It hurts." When Feng Xingliu spoke, his mouth seemed to hurt. It was mainly because he was so seriously injured that he hurt all over when he moved. Han Fei flipped his hand and threw 3 balls of liquid divine light at him. But in order to show off, Feng Xingliu tried his best. Enduring the pain all over his body, he chuckled. It's just a minor injury. What's there to worry about? Then, he opened his mouth and inhaled, and 3 balls of liquid divine light entered his body. Then, Feng Xingliu walked out of the flames, his body burning with raging flames. His blood was flowing backward, and his wounds were healing. He walked out with a pace that did not recognize even his own family. He spat and raised his hand, and 278 heaven-opening qualification tokens flew to Han Fei. Feng Xingliu said, "I'll raise the stakes." How much are nearly 600 heaven-opening qualification tokens worth? Feng Qingqing suddenly understood. With a wave of her hand, 362 heaven-opening qualification tokens flew to Han Fei. Feng Qingqing nodded. I'll raise the stakes too. Feng Qingqing naturally knew that now that the heavenly race had blocked the channel, they couldn't sell these tokens. Since Kang Xian wasn't afraid of the heavenly race, she would give them to him. However, Kang Xian was not stupid. He had sent someone to investigate just now, and the results of the investigation were out. One of the things that happened recently was that the heavenly race ordered that no one was allowed to accept the qualification tokens in Han Fei's hands, or they would be enemies with the heavenly race. Ha ha ha, Kang Xian immediately smiled and said, "Isn't that so? Even the Phoenix God clan is so poor. Do they need to sell qualification tokens in exchange for resources?" At that moment, Feng Yu suddenly looked at Kang Xian. Kang Xian's heart trembled. There was an inexplicable pressure. He almost forgot that this Feng Yu, the top expert on the heaven list, was also from the Phoenix divine race. However, as the third prince of the divine capital's royal family, he still had his composure. He said calmly, "I think this is the real purpose of your visit, right? The heavenly race threatened all the other races not to buy your qualification tokens. Then, you thought of my fighting Dragon Street. You even called it a challenge. Ha, just for this, you destroyed the fighting Dragon Street, am I right?" Han Fei didn't feel embarrassed at all. He said calmly, "Yes, this is one of the main reasons. But more importantly, I am good at fighting. Since the heavenly race can't affect the fighting Dragon Street, I can sell it here." Kong Xian scoffed. "Then you can sell it here. Why did you choose the fighting Dragon Street? Aren't you not giving me face?" Han Fei said, "If I want others to buy my qualification token, I have to be a little famous. In short, can this qualification token be regarded as my personal property?" Kong Xian said, "Yes. I'll buy it at 20% of the market price in the fighting Dragon Street. I won't buy it if it's too high." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. If it was put in the Zhao family's resource trade center, it would be 10% higher than the market price. Now, it was 20% lower than the market price. With this, he had lost 30% of his stock. When Han Fei was about to finish speaking, he heard Kong Xian say, "It's not over yet. If you want my fighting Dragon Street to buy your resources, you have to show your identity. You have to reveal your identity. Only then can I arrange the life and death arena." He was not a fool. Sometimes, he was very smart. No one in the entire market wants your goods. If I want them, of course, I have to give you a discount. No one in the entire Divine Capital dynasty knows Han Fei's identity, but I have to know. But in fact, these were not reasons. Kong Xian didn't lack the 30% of resources, and he didn't care about Han Fei's identity. What he wanted from Han Fei now was face. This was the price of destroying the fighting Dragon Street. Chapter 23:30. However, in Han Fei's opinion, the fighting Dragon Street had already been destroyed by him and Feng Xinglu. How could he lose face? In the past, it would have been fine if he didn't have any status. But now, no matter what, he managed to get an identity from the war god's side. As for whether this identity was high enough, Han Fei didn't think it was bad. The savage ancient clan must be a major force that had stood on the West Sea divine continent for countless years. Feng Xinglu didn't know. He had always thought that Han Fei was from the ancient demon god clan. Among all the ancient clans in the divine prefecture of the West Sea, the ancient demon god clan was the most miserable. He recalled Han Fei's words. If Han Fei revealed his identity, the ones who attacked him might be venerable sovereigns instead of heaven-opening realm cultivators. At that time, even the Phoenix God clan would not be able to protect him. Feng Xinglu snorted coldly, "If you have the guts, then beat my brother's identity out. What's the point of threatening?" Feng Xinglu felt that the people on Battle Dragon Street were no match for Han Fei. They couldn't force Han Fei to use the methods of the ancient fiend celestials. However, Han Fei chuckled. "You want to know my identity? Sure. What can I get from the arena of life and death?" Kong Xian's lips curled into a smile. "As long as you win, you'll get as many resources as you can take out." Of course, the other party had to agree first. If the Celestials chose not to fight, then naturally there would be no life and death arena. Of course, even if there's no life and death arena, you'll still have to sell your resources, right? Han Fei frowned slightly. "I went through so much trouble just to sell these resources. Moreover, it was sold at a 30% discount. Star Phoenix voice transmission, why don't we just forget about it? After all." Feng Yu looked at Feng Xinglu, and then at Han Fei, wondering how they became brothers. Feng Xinglu isn't as dumb as he used to be. Also, what status does little junior brother have? Why is he pretending at this time? Did he want to use his identity as a member of the Void Temple? Once his identity as a member of the Void Shrine was exposed, it would be no small matter. Of the 3 shrines, the Void Shrine was the most secretive. Even in the Temple of Time, there were often people walking in the world. However, there were only a dozen people in the Void Shrine, and they were spread out far and wide. It was extremely difficult to find them among the countless experts of the 5 divine prefectures. Once his identity was exposed, the number of people who would pay attention to him would be unimaginable. At that time, if he didn't borrow eldest senior brother's strength, he probably wouldn't be able to escape at all, right? Han Fei said, "Okay. With the power and status of the Tian clan in the Eastern Sea's divine prefecture, if they're afraid to even fight, then I'll accept it." Then, Han Fei looked around on both sides of Dolong Street. Amidst the countless curious and jeering voices, the red light on his body loomed. Feng Xingliu muttered, "Han Fei, buzz." Suddenly, everyone saw 2 axes flying in the air, full of fighting intent. Behind Han Fei, there seemed to be a terrifying figure rising from the ground. That figure was covered in a scarlet glow. His face could not be seen clearly, but his boundless battle intent shocked everyone on Dolong Street. Fuck, what kind of race is this? What a crazy battle intent. Ha! This shouldn't be from the Divine East Sea, right? At least it can't be the Fist Light Mountain Peak. The Fist Light Mountain Peak doesn't have such an inheritance. What's that behind him? It looks like some kind of god's shadow. Good heavens, this guy really has a great background. I knew that a person who can fight through Dolong Street can't be an ordinary person, let alone an independent cultivator. Suddenly, someone exclaimed, "I know, this is the West Wilderness God of War, the legendary West Wilderness God of War who has godlike combat power even though he hasn't become a god yet." Huh? War god, what kind of race is that? The Savage Ancient Clan. What? This guy is from the West Sea Divine Prefecture. People from the West Sea Divine Prefecture come to the East Sea to be arrogant. Fuck, kill him. I've never seen such an arrogant and domineering person from the West Wilderness. Even if you have a great background in the West Wilderness, you still have to behave yourself in the East Sea Divine Prefecture. Who wants to fight in this life and death ring and nail this Western barbarian to death in the dragon battle ring? Many rich kids who had been cheering for Han Fei and the others just now had now turned around and targeted Han Fei. These people were very curious. Why couldn't people from the West Sea Divine Prefecture be arrogant in the East Sea Divine Prefecture? They inexplicably began to unite, as if the East Sea was their home and it was up to everyone to protect it. Feng Yi revealed a look of surprise in her heart. She knew Han Fei's identity and background the best because she was the one who handled Han Fei's entrance test. Han Fei couldn't have anything to do with the West Sea Divine Prefecture. She could only say that Han Fei had some opportunity after coming out and obtained the inheritance of the war god of the Savage Ancient Clan. Feng Yu couldn't help but smile. She had been thinking about how to help Han Fei out, but now she didn't have to. However, she was puzzled that her junior brother was going to fight in the dragon battle ring. In this arena, there was no such thing as fairness or unfairness. If she hadn't learned that Han Fei had captured a peak star transformation heavenly clan, she would have stopped him. Feng Xingliu's eyes widened and she looked at Han Fei in surprise. Savage Ancient Clan? How could it be the Savage Ancient Clan? Immediately, Feng Xingliu's heart thumped. A story was born. Back then, the fiend god ancient clan was invaded and the divine prince was slaughtered. Han Fei, who had just been born, was secretly sent to the savage ancient clan and lived a life of concealment. For revenge, he began to fight crazily and loot resources. As a divine prince, he didn't hesitate to be branded with the inheritance mark of another clan. How much pressure was he under? Immediately, Feng Xingliu's blood boiled and flames started to burn. Unfortunately, although he had swallowed 3 balls of liquid divine light, he was still heavily injured and mentally exhausted. He couldn't get stronger. Because of the appearance of the war god Phantom, people didn't pay much attention to Feng Xingliu. They only thought he had recovered a little and there was nothing special about him. The war god seal and the war god Phantom disappeared. Han Fei held his head high. See? This is my identity. It's not that I don't need to come out, but I've met a bunch of losers along the way. You want me to show my identity? Kong Xian frowned. This was unexpected. He had thought that Han Fei might be from the North Sea Divine Prefecture, the South Sea Divine Prefecture, or some hidden force. But he didn't expect that this guy was from the West Sea Divine Prefecture. Hee hee. Hee hee. Kong Xian laughed. You're the boldest Western wilderness barbarian I've ever seen. Han Fei raised his head. What? Are you looking down on me? Kong Xian said casually, not really, but since you've shown your identity, you're doomed. Han Fei could hear people on both sides of Dolong Street sighing, cursing, and all kinds of voices. Someone said, the West Sea Divine Prefecture is too far away. Even though Han Fei is a descendant of the war god, he can't escape from the heavenly race in the East Sea Divine Prefecture. Someone said with a guilty conscience, unless he never leaves the Divine Capital Dynasty in his life, he'll be doomed after the competition. Someone clicked his tongue and said, if it were me, I wouldn't fight this guy. After the 10,000-year competition, he will be dead for sure. No one will be able to save him. Someone else sighed. But can the heavenly race really hold back? If they don't, they'll lose face today. And after today, Han Fei will be famous in the Divine Capital Dynasty. If he challenges the heavenly race again, how can they bear it? Someone frowned. No matter how talented this person is, the heavenly race has many peerless cultivators. There are several on the heaven list. Will they refuse to fight? Suddenly, someone said, I just got the news. Yi Chen of the heavenly race was captured by Han Fei. The heavenly race used 2 million kilometers of resources to exchange for him. Hiss, what? How is that possible? Yi Chen is a peak star transformation cultivator. This guy. Huh. Wait. I can't see Han Fei's natal star at all. Shoot, this guy has a way to hide his natal star. I heard that he hadn't turned into a star a few years ago. Nonsense. How can he capture a peak star transformation cultivator? Would you believe me if I told you? Oh. Don't forget, he may be able to borrow the power of the war god. That's true. For a while, there was a lot of discussion on both sides of Dolong Street. From the beginning, they wanted to kill Han Fei and Feng Xinglu, but now they didn't care if the Dolong Street was destroyed. They were just waiting to see the heavenly race's performance. Their evaluation of Han Fei and Feng Xinglu soared. The heavenly talents of the West Wilderness were also heavenly talents. As for Feng Xinglu, there was no need to talk about it. That guy's final burst of power had even awakened his bloodline. Now that Feng Yu, the strongest on the heaven list, was here, it was impossible to kill these two. However, even if they couldn't kill these two, they still wanted to see the heavenly race defeat Han Fei. Otherwise, wouldn't it seem that there was no one in the divine East Ocean? At this time, as Kong Xian waved his fingers, someone had already gone to prepare the resources. In any case, the qualification token he got from Han Fei at this price could be sold to him for 50% of the profit. Why wouldn't he accept other people's money? After a while, when the resources of 1,000,000 kilometers were placed in front of Han Fei, Kong Xian said lightly, this is a good deal. As for whether the heavenly race will come or not, we will know in a moment. Chapter 23:31. At this moment, Han Fei could faintly feel the authority of the strong. The real strong had nothing to fear, because the enemies he faced were not worthy of his fear. Just like now, although he had not reached the peak of the star transformation realm, in terms of peak combat power, he was confident that he could fight against an expert at the peak of the star transformation realm. The main reason was that he had the confidence. With the ridiculously powerful void-stealing technique, if it was just an expert at the peak of the star transformation realm who came to challenge him, he had a chance to defeat the opponent. Of course, Han Fei knew that there must be someone in this world who could crack the void-stealing technique. After all, the 9th level of void fishing was not a divine quality technique, but an ultra-quality one among the emperor techniques. No matter what level the void fishing technique was, it was a technique that could only be practiced by emperors. In theory, the void stealing technique was also a technique that could only be mastered by emperors. If he mastered it in advance, it was equivalent to having the power of emperors in advance. For heaven opening stage experts, this was equivalent to a dimensionality reduction blow most of the time. Therefore, Han Fei was not afraid of the life and death ring at all. Even if he had to face an expert at the level of Zhao Honghuang, Han Fei would not be afraid. This was his confidence. After a while, many people suddenly turned to look at the entrance of Dolong Street. A man with long hair draped over his shoulders was walking over. From the way he walked to the expression on his face, this person seemed to be a little feminine. In terms of charm, he occasionally showed some feminine characteristics. When Han Fei saw this person, he frowned slightly. He was too feminine, which gave people a very bad feeling. There were many emotions in people, but some instinctively made people feel a little scared and unhappy. Compared with pure evil, this kind of feminine and sinister feeling was particularly weird. Of course, Han Fei was not afraid. He wanted to see how the Heavenly Clan would make a move this time. After Yi Qian was captured by him last time, Han Fei thought that the Heavenly Clan would not dare to make a move at will. Or they must have found a way to deal with him. However, Han Fei was confident that the Heavenly Clan did not know all his means, because he had not shown some of his power yet. What, the Heavenly Clan released this guy? Yi Qianqing. It's the monster Yi Qianqing. Oh. Finished, Han Fei is finished. Compared with this god of slaughter, Han Fei is nothing. My goodness, I haven't heard any news about Yi Qianqing for almost 1,000 years. It was said that he was suppressed by the Tian clan. Why would he appear in the god capital dynasty at this time? Hiss. Someone took a deep breath. Is this guy here for Han Fei? Oh. Yi Qianqing, long time no see. Kang Xian sat on his chair and took a sip of wine. When did you come to Shendu dynasty? Yi Qianqing's voice was just as feminine as his temperament. It's been 3 months. I heard that someone has appeared in the wilderness and is madly attacking the Celestials. TSK, what a pity, why didn't you kill him? Isn't it good to kill those good-for-nothings? The corners of Yi Qianqing's mouth curled up as a faint red glow appeared in his eyes. Yi Qianqing looked at Han Fei and let out a shrill laugh. I really didn't expect you to be willing to take the life and death ring of the dragon. What a pity, I was still counting on you to help me kill more good-for-nothings of the Tian clan in the 10,000-year competition. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Han Fei curled his lips. Weird, you hate the Tian clan so much, why did you come here to fight for them? Are you out of your mind? Immediately, the two sides of Fighting Dragon Street fell silent. Even these rich second generations were unwilling to pay attention to this lunatic Yi Qianqing. But Han Fei mocked him unscrupulously. Yi Qianqing licked his lips, his shoulders slightly shrugging. Interesting, as expected of the person who defeated Fighting Dragon Street. Don't worry, when I take off your head and extract your soul, marrow, bloodline. Hee, I will definitely kill more Tian clan powerhouses for you. At this time, Feng Yu said, Yi Qianqing was already famous 10,000 years ago. This person is known for his viciousness and cruelty. He once entered the Divine Land's prodigy selection in Zhonghai. Because of his cruelty and bloodthirstiness, no one who fought with him survived. As a result, top prodigies fell one after another, so he was forced to withdraw from the competition and was sent back to the Divine Land of the East Sea. Han Fei responded, it doesn't make sense. Feng Yu said, it does, but I wasn't even born at that time. Why don't I fight this battle? It's just as well. Let me see just how strong these experts who have been famous for 10,000 years are. Han Fei said, don't. Leave this person to me. The Tian clan has caused me huge losses. If I let you do it for me, how can I vent my hatred? Feng Yu was speechless. You have hatred in your heart because you lost money. Feng Yu said, when you reach the late stage of the star transformation stage, I won't stop you, but you haven't turned into a star yet, Han Fei said. I turned into a star. Huh? Feng Yu's beautiful eyes lit up. Turned into a star. Wait, when did Han Fei turn into a star? Did he turn into a star so fast? Feng Yu said in surprise, when did you turn into a star? You didn't turn into a star last time, right? How many times have you turned into a star? Hearing Feng Yu's series of questions, Han Fei said perfunctorily, you know I know the great path of time, right? So I can speed up time for myself. I told Feng Xingliu that I turned into a star because I didn't want to discourage him. But in fact, I turned into a star from 640,000 kilometers away. Han Fei thought about it and didn't tell her the fact that he turned into a star from 810,000 kilometers away, because it might discourage Feng Yu. Wow, Feng Yu took a deep breath. How many years has it been? It seems to be no more than 5 years. In less than 3 years, he turned into a star from no star. Feng Yu was dumbfounded. However, Feng Yu wasn't surprised that Han Fei turned into a star from 640,000 kilometers away. Her senior brother's eyes couldn't be wrong. If Han Fei turned into a star from 490,000 kilometers away, she would be surprised. After all, although turning into a star from 490,000 kilometers away was also a genius, there were still some such talents. Not many, but after a long time, there would be a lot of them. But turning into a star from 640,000 kilometers away was relatively rare. Even after a long time, although the number was not only 1 or 2, it could be said to be extremely rare. Besides, not many of those who could turn into a star from 640,000 kilometers away were still in the sea realm. Because the probability of turning into a star from 640,000 kilometers away was very high. After becoming an emperor, not many people were willing to stay in the sea realm. In order to continue to become stronger, many venerable emperors would go to the star ocean. The vast star ocean seemed endless, and even venerable emperors couldn't explore it completely. But Feng Yu was a little hesitant. After the surprise, she sighed slightly. Should I tell little junior brother that I turned into a star from 810,000 kilometers away? What if I hurt little junior brother? Han Fei and Feng Yu were both afraid of hurting each other, so they both concealed some truths. Feng Yu thought for a while. Since little junior brother dared to fight, he must have some confidence. So what if it was the life and death ring of the dragon? Even if little junior brother was really defeated, who would dare to stop him? At worst, when eldest senior brother took action and suppressed the divine capital, who would dare to touch Han Fei? Feng Yu nodded slightly. Han Fei tilted his head and said to Yi Qianxing, "Oh, you scared me. You even extracted my soul and sucked my marrow. Who the hell do you think you are? I can beat you until you kneel on the ground and call me daddy." Hiss, countless people held their breath and gasped. Even Kong Xian twitched the corner of his mouth. Fine. I don't care about this anymore. 2 lunatics, fight as you like. Yi Qianxing abruptly raised his eyes and glared at Han Fei. Then, he grinned so widely that his grin almost reached his ears. Han Fei muttered, "What a fucking pervert. His mouth is so big like a clown." Yi Qianxing's slightly cold voice sounded. "Very good, I will let you die in pain." Han Fei ignored him and looked at Kong Xian. "Tell me, where is the life and death ring of the dragon?" Kong Xian, together with the throne under his butt, disappeared from Fighting Dragon Street. When only Han Fei and the others were left on Fighting Dragon Street. Someone shouted, "Come to Fighting Dragon Street if you don't know anything. The life and death ring of the dragon is under your feet." At this time, Kong Xian's voice sounded from a tall building. "Except for the contestants, everyone else leave immediately. The Fighting Dragon barrier is about to open." Ho, ha ha ha. Today's life and death ring of the dragon is going to be interesting. Yi Qianxing, kill him. Tear this guy from the West Wilderness apart. Kill Han Fei, kill Han Fei. Shouts rose and fell in succession on Dolong Street. Feng Yu grabbed Feng Xingliu, who was unable to move, and left Battle Dragon Street with Feng Yu. Feng Xingliu snorted reluctantly, but obviously, Han Fei's battle was more important. He quickly said, Han Fei will be fine, right? This guy is very strong. I can't beat him. Feng Yu sneered. Of course you can't beat him. Who can you beat? Ah. Feng Yu, don't go too far. I'm the most handsome guy on this street now. Feng Yu pouted. Look around. Where is the most handsome guy? Feng Xingliu looked around. Kill Han Fei. Chop him up. Ah. Place your bets, it's time to bet, it's time to bet. At this time, Feng Xingliu was dumbfounded. These people are too much. Have they forgotten me so quickly? Chapter 23:32. Ignoring the shouts of the crowd, Han Fei looked at Feng Yu and Feng Xingliu. He said to them via voice transmission, let's start the bet. Xingliu, bet all the resources you have on you. Let's split them half and half. Feng Yu, do you have money? The corner of Feng Yu's mouth twitched, but she still turned and walked to the casino. Then Han Fei pointed at Yi Qianqing. Let's not talk about anything else. Take out your gambling money first. Let me know that you are not poor. Yi Qianqing wasn't angry. He licked the corner of his mouth, threw out a small world, and said, if you beat me, you won't care about these resources. I don't have any divine weapons, but I have enough resources. Ha ha ha, I heard that you have several ultra-quality divine weapons. I'll take them all. Han Fei curled his lips. You don't even have a divine weapon. Poor. Yi Qianqing's face darkened. It was not that he didn't have any, but that he didn't need them. He was on the edge and didn't want to use divine weapons to elevate himself. When only Han Fei and Yi Qianqing were left on the Fighting Dragon Street. From one end to the other. Wherever there were patterns on the ground, a pale golden light burst out. In the sky, a pale golden phantom exactly the same length and width as the Fighting Dragon Street appeared. The golden light trembled for a moment, then gradually faded, and finally disappeared, turning transparent. But in fact, if someone appeared on the edge of the Fighting Dragon Street at this time, they would find that they had been blocked by an invisible barrier. Yi Qianqing lowered his hands and said in a cold voice, the Fighting Dragon barrier is strengthened by the Venerable Emperor. The barrier won't open until you're dead. TSK, are you afraid? Han Fei chuckled. Afraid? A sissy like you? Fuck, the more advantageous Han Fei's counterattack was, the more excited the spectators were, because they all knew that Han Fei would be beaten like a storm by Yi Qianqing. Feng Xingliu said, Han Fei is invincible with his provoke skill. Feng Qingqing asked, Sister, can brother Han Fei win? This person seems very strong. Feng Yu nodded. Peak star transformation. Huh? Feng Xingliu's eyes widened. Peak star transformation. You still want him to fight? Although Feng Xinglu and Han Fei had fought against Yi Chen, who was at the peak of the star transformation realm, Han Fei fought the opponent alone. However, that did not mean that every celestial transformation realm cultivator was easy to deal with. For a moment, Feng Xingliu's breath quickened, thinking that Han Fei was really a lunatic. When he thought about it this way, he felt that he wasn't crazy to fight his way through Dolong Street. At this moment, Yi Qianqing stood on the street, and Han Fei stood at the end. The two of them were nearly 80,000 li apart. However, there were very few people who could watch the battle. Most of them could only wait for the result. Amidst their frenzied roars, all of a sudden, the two people on Dolong Street disappeared. Dong, 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 in the next moment, 3 powerful explosions erupted in the middle of Dolong Street. Waves of light and ripples of energy crashed into the Battle Dragon barrier one after another. At this moment, on both sides of the Battle Dragon Street, not many people, even those at the heaven opening stage, could see their movements clearly. Bang! At the end of the Fighting Dragon Street, Han Fei slammed into the Fighting Dragon barrier, causing ripples on the invisible barrier. What happened? What just happened? So fast, it's faster than 5 times the speed of light. Fuck, do you need the strength of the heaven opening stage to watch the life and death game now? No, I have to ask my family for resources to improve my strength. Some of them were able to clearly see what had happened in that instant. Han Fei instantly burst out with 6 times the speed of light, but Yi Qianqing, at that moment, burst out with 10 times the speed of light. This was the fastest one Han Fei had met so far. No one could beat him. In fact, at that moment, Han Fei was hit by Yi Qianli 13 times in a row, but Han Fei couldn't touch Yi Qianqing at all. Because the attacks were too fast, there seemed to be only 2 or 3 waves of shock ripples. In the blink of an eye, Yi Qianqing was still standing in place, but Han Fei had already hit the fighting dragon barrier at the end of Dolong Street. If it weren't for Han Fei's change of position, many people would have moved. However, this was just a test. No one would take this seriously. Han Fei just grinned, and then the two of them disappeared again. Yi Qianqing could burst out with 10 times the speed of light, which was certainly powerful, but Yi Qianqing must have known that Han Fei had the means to steal his speed and even his consciousness. So, why did he show such a fast speed in front of Han Fei? He knew that it was impossible to crush Han Fei with speed. Therefore, in the second confrontation, at the moment when Han Fei was attacked by Yi Qianqing, Han Fei thought of something. Yi Qianqing's body paused, and Han Fei punched back. The invincible fist mark hit Yi Qianqing's head. Bam! The people outside could only see Yi Qianqing's figure suddenly appear, but the next moment, his body exploded into powder. Fuck! What happened? So fast. I can't see any trace of his attack at all. Countless people looked horrified, because this time, it was Yi Qianqing who exploded. Han Fei, on the other hand, sensed a wonderful Tao. It was a very strange kind of Tao. It was like the Tao of doppelgangers, but it was clearly not the Tao of doppelgangers. But he could only feel a little bit of this Tao, so he couldn't understand what Tao it was. But he knew Yi Qianqing's Tao of speed. This Tao was invincible, which ignored space. It was a method of teleportation realized by the combination of spiritual will and space. At this moment, Han Fei stood at the end of the fighting dragon street, and Yi Qianqing's voice sounded at the end of the street. Well, as they said, you took away my power. This should be a kind of divine technique, right? Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. Because the power he stole was real, the person he just blew up should be real too. But Han Fei immediately noticed that something was wrong. If that person just now was real, how could he have blown up with one punch? He had fought with peak star transformation cultivators before. Not to mention peak star transformation cultivators, even the late-stage star transformation cultivators couldn't be blown up with one punch. If he could erupt with all his strength, he might be able to do it, but the power that his current body could bear was absolutely impossible. Therefore, Han Fei was sure that the person just now was fake. The power he got was real, but the person was fake. A fake person could erupt with the combat power of a real person, but it was not a clone. Was this a divine technique or some kind of Tao? Han Fei was not sure, but he still wanted to try again. This time, standing at the end of the fighting dragon street, Han Fei just tilted his neck slightly and deprived the consciousness of the Yi Qianqing at the end of the street, making him fall into a deep sleep. Han Fei stepped in front of Yi Qianqing without hesitation, but he didn't think this person was Yi Qianqing. Han Fei didn't hesitate to steal power from this person for the third time, stealing this person's Tao. This time, Han Fei only managed to steal a tiny bit of the power of heavenly Tao. Although he knew that this person was fake, he wanted to see if he could steal the Tao from this person. In the end, he did steal, but it was too little, insignificant, not even enough for him to understand. It was a very strange feeling, as if he had only stolen a hair from a cow. He couldn't see through this hair that this was a cow. So Han Fei still couldn't understand what this person's Tao was. Outside the fighting dragon street, many people were surprised. Wait, what is Yi Qianqing doing? Attack! What the fuck is he doing? Is he under Han Fei's illusion? Suddenly, Han Fei reached out and inserted his hand into Yi Qianqing's body. He felt that the other party's physique was not even at the early stage of the heaven-opening realm. When he inserted his hand into Yi Qianqing's body, it was as easy as poking through a layer of paper. Rip, under Han Fei's stirring power, this body was obliterated. At this time, Yi Qianqing appeared at the end of the Fighting Dragon Street. "Are you looking for me?" The others were a little confused, wondering what the two of them were doing. They kept changing their positions, from the end of the street to the end, from the end to the end, and from the end to the end. They kept changing their positions, but the two of them didn't attack. What the hell? Han Fei looked back with a smile. Interesting. He calculated in his heart. This was a bit like the molting of the ghost blade. He used this layer of skin to block Han Fei's void theft. But Han Fei wasn't sure yet, so he needed to experiment again. Han Fei attacked again. This time, because he didn't steal Yi Qianqing's power directly, Han Fei and Yi Qianqing had a close combat. Fist against palm, the two of them hit each other fiercely, and cracks appeared on the ground. At that moment, Han Fei felt a purple light from Yi Qianqing's palm enter his body. It was a strange poison. In Han Fei's chest, the God Thought bead flashed, and the poison was basically purified in an instant. There might be some left, but Han Fei wasn't a noob. His poison resistance was also terrifying. Therefore, Han Fei didn't care about Yi Qianqing's dirty tricks at all. At that moment, he gave up on the power he had stolen. He stole Yi Qianqing's great path again. However, the moment he thought of stealing, the great path of time burst out around him. Time was reversed here, and Han Fei stole again. At that moment, Han Fei clearly felt something strange. The great path of time was offset by a kind of speed resistance. Therefore, although Han Fei stole more power of the great path the second time, it was still not enough. If he had only stolen a hair before, he had only stolen a handful of hair now. However, at this moment, Han Fei realized that he had caught a handful of hair, which meant that it wasn't that he couldn't steal Yi Qianqing's great path, but that he didn't have enough time to steal it. Therefore, after stealing for the second time, Han Fei immediately cast the great path of time on himself. The next moment, his speed reached 8 times the speed of light. Yi Qianqing, who was already affected by the great path of time, couldn't run 10 times the speed of light anymore, so Han Fei stole for the third time. Bam! However, when Han Fei stole for the third time, Yi Qianqing suddenly emitted thousands of streams of light. Han Fei had probably stolen another handful of great path. When the two of them appeared again, the thousands of streams of light gathered and reformed into Yi Qianqing's appearance. He smiled. Interesting. You're obsessed with stealing my great path. Chapter 23-33. On both sides of Fighting Dragon Street, many people were dumbfounded. At first, they shouted, but then they found that they couldn't watch a battle of this level at all, so they stopped shouting. Their perception swept back and forth on Fighting Dragon Street, just to find where Han Fei and Yi Qianqing were. Yes, most people were caught up in the strange thing of looking for them. However, some people looked at the field in a different way. Feng Xingliu could see the battle between Han Fei and Yi Qianqing. He saw the great path of time and the occasional confrontation. It was more like Han Fei was chasing, and Yi Qianqing somehow exploded into countless streams of light. Perhaps because he didn't understand Han Fei's great path and great technique, he was dumbfounded. Most people who could see the battle between the two felt the same way as Feng Xingliu. Only the dozen late-stage and peak star transformation cultivators, as well as Kong Xian, Feng Yu, and the others, were deep in thought. The battle pattern of these two was very strange. Both of them were testing each other, and they were still testing each other after several rounds. Yi Qianqing seemed to be evading something, and Han Fei didn't seem to want him to evade. He even used the great path of time to reverse time. Although they didn't know what kind of battle these two had at that moment, they knew that these two must have had a very terrifying battle, but others couldn't see it. And Feng Yu was deep in thought. She seemed to have heard something like this from senior sister Red Lotus once. That was the world of Red Lotus and the world of Green Lotus having fun. Senior Sister Red Lotus said, "I steal your great path." Senior Sister Green Lotus said, "I steal your chaotic spiritual treasure." Senior Sister Red Lotus said, "I steal your thoughts." World of Green Lotus said, "I steal your thoughts." Anyway, Feng Yu felt very strange at that time. It felt like a child playing house. Then he asked Senior Sister Green Lotus and Senior Sister Red Lotus. Then Senior Sister Red Lotus said, "This is a great technique deduced by the former masters of the Void Temple." Unfortunately, those seniors died before it was truly completed. For some reason, Feng Yu thought of this scene when she saw the battle between Han Fei and Yi Qianqing. Han Fei didn't do much, but Yi Qianqing defended himself to the death. Feng Yu thought to herself, "I have to ask little junior brother later. If this is really the unfinished great technique that Senior Sister Red Lotus mentioned, I might be able to learn it." In the field. In this confrontation, Han Fei and Yi Qianqing didn't seem to fight, but they both used a lot of means. Although Han Fei couldn't take down Yi Qianqing, he still had a part of him in his hands. He didn't intend to give up the path he had just snatched. With a thought, he activated the void descent technique, and a clone descended on the quasi-natal star. Buzz! With the appearance of the Green Jade Bridge, Han Fei planned to create something out of nothing and see if he could comprehend more of this Tao. And Han Fei's real body really rushed out this time. With the addition of the heavenly energy, the god beads, the god murdering gloves, and the circulation of the great Tao, Han Fei's qi and blood suddenly soared into the sky. He put his hands together and the immortal evil qi burst out. 1, 2, 3, 36 baleful immortals charged forward. They would not stop until they caught up to Yi Qianqing's people. However, considering Yi Qianqing's art of molting, Han Fei knew that the immortal baleful immortal would not work. At most, it would kill 36 dummies. All he had to do was stall for time. However, from the outside, it looked much more intense than just now. The immortal evil qi was not a minor technique. It was Han Fei's previous major killing technique. Even now, it was not something that could be easily broken by anyone. Han Fei stood where he was without moving after the immortal evil qi was shot out, which was a bit puzzling to the onlookers. However, when they heard the continuous sounds of explosions in the void and the entire fighting dragon barrier being blasted, the audience became very excited. Han Fei's heart sank. It was too fast. Yi Qianqing broke the immortal evil qi too fast. "Hey! Is that all you've got?" At that moment, Yi Qianqing appeared next to Han Fei at 10 times the speed of light, with 2 black bone blades in his hands. Han Fei failed to dodge, mainly because he was not fast enough. Faced with 10 times the speed of light, even if he accelerated time, he still could not reach Yi Qianqing. Clink, clink, ha! Suddenly, Yi Qianqing's cunning and evil expression disappeared, because he found that his dark bone spikes could not penetrate Han Fei's skin. How was that possible? He was at the peak of the star transformation realm. In terms of physique and strength, he could not be weaker than Han Fei. Even though he had fought with Han Fei and knew that Han Fei's physique and strength were very strong, so what? He was at the peak of the star transformation realm. From the star transformation realm to the peak, this road was the real rise of the heaven-opening realm. Han Fei had not left yet, but he had already left. There was no reason that he could not penetrate Han Fei. The road to invincibility. At that moment, Han Fei's body burst out with dazzling golden light. The infinity water was penetrated by the 2 black spikes, and even the invincible golden body was almost penetrated. At this moment, there was an obvious strange poison spreading in his chest. However, the God's Thought Bead, an ultra-quality assistive divine artifact, finally showed its brilliance at this moment. A ripple of light spread from Han Fei's body, and the spreading dark green poison was directly purified. Suddenly, Yi Qianqing's figure disappeared. He had retreated because he felt a trace of threat just now. What a fast reaction! Han Fei's heart thumped. Just now, he released the phantom in a straight line. Although he could not control Yi Qianqing with the void lines now, he could still scare him. However, this kind of scaring might work once, but it might not work twice. On the natal star, the projection was walking on the Jasper Stone Bridge. Han Fei did not want to use the Jasper Stone Bridge to directly walk on Yi Qianqing's great path, because he knew that even if his real body walked on Yi Qianqing's great path, he would be much weaker than Yi Qianqing. Therefore, his purpose was to know what this great path was. However, after a short confrontation with Han Fei, Yi Qianqing seemed to be sure that Han Fei could not do anything to him, so he was a little unscrupulous. He did not intend to give Han Fei a chance to react. He wanted to defeat him quickly. Yi Qianqing, who had just retreated, attacked again. Those who walk the road to invincibility will die a horrible death. But wouldn't it be better if I kill him, ha ha ha. Yi Qianqing appeared again. Han Fei knew that the fist mark was ineffective, so he was ready to draw his knife. But suddenly, Han Fei felt something was wrong. At that moment, it was not Yi Qianqing's real body, but a soul. Yang soul. Someone exclaimed, the Yang soul has left the body. This is the road to the Ghost Strait. Someone laughed and said, Han Fei is doomed. Even if he has turned into a star, how can he resist the Yang soul technique? Ghost Eye, Infinite Blood Prison. At that moment, the fighting dragon street turned into a pool of blood. In the pool of blood, thick blood and decaying creatures enveloped Han Fei. This was not an illusion, but soul poison, a poison that the other party had given his soul. Perhaps Yi Qianqing saw that ordinary physical poisons did not work on Han Fei, so he poisoned Han Fei's soul. Ha ha ha. Let's go, Ghost King Dharma body. Clatter, blood rose from the pool of blood, and a ferocious blood man rose from the ground, more than 300 meters tall. Gulp. Ah. Kong Xian drank up the wine in his cup and said lightly, even if Han Fei is a peerless heavenly talent, his physical body and combat techniques are not inferior to those at the peak of the star transformation realm. But his soul is always his weakness. The Ghost King Dharma body can only be cultivated with extremely powerful soul power. This Dharma body is mainly used to attack and corrode the soul. I'm afraid Han Fei can't do it. Wu, why are you here? A long dress appeared next to Kong Xian. It was Princess Lanxin who came with Feng Yu. She said lightly, Feng Yu asked me about Han Fei, and I can feel that the relationship between the two is not shallow. If Han Fei dies, I'm afraid you will also be hated by her. Once Feng Yu proves her Dao, you have to be careful. Kong Xian smiled. So what? When she proves her Dao on the divine list, I may be afraid of her. Number 1 on the heaven list, huh? However, the next moment, the corners of Kong Xian's mouth stiffened, and he couldn't help but sit up straight. Han Fei's body stood on the spot, and his soul also left his body. Is he crazy? This was the common feeling of everyone who saw this scene. Can your soul compare to Yi Qianqing's Yang soul? However, the next moment, Han Fei's Yang soul formed a fist seal and punched the blood pool. Bam! Under everyone's horrified gazes, the blood pool collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, someone exclaimed, Yang soul, this guy has also cultivated a Yang soul. Impossible, how can the Yang soul be used directly through the Yang soul itself like a physical body? Everyone felt it was absurd. Even if Han Fei hid his strength and had actually cultivated a Yang soul, he still had to use the divine soul technique, right? How could he directly punch the ground like this? The point was that with one punch, the blood pool was gone. What was called Dharma body double kill? Today, Han Fei was going to let Yi Qianqing and these ignorant foppish playboys see. Chapter 23-34. Han Fei didn't care if some of his trump cards were exposed. Whether they were exposed or not, it wouldn't be easy for him to leave the Divine Capital Dynasty after the competition. It would be better to take advantage of this opportunity to quickly get some resources for himself. Han Fei felt that if he hadn't worked so hard to get resources, he wouldn't have been able to turn into a star so smoothly. Han Fei also thought that if he killed Yi Qianqing, he might be able to take out his star core and stuff it into his natal star. Then he might be able to save the energy to create the earth veins. Maybe he could condense his own star core quickly. Han Fei's yang spirit appeared, reached out to the void, and the Tao patterns of heaven and earth condensed, and two god-sealing spears burst out. Someone exclaimed, "What?" He grabbed the Tao patterns of heaven and earth? How did he do that? Someone said, this guy must have hidden his strength. How could he fight a peak star transformation realm cultivator without turning into a star? I didn't believe it at the time. Yes. Now it seems that Han Fei must have turned into a star long ago, at least in the late stage, or even the late stage. Feng Yu was the most surprised. Feng Xingliu had long been used to Han Fei's strength. From the first time Han Fei met him, Han Fei had shown his strength. Later, Han Fei unleashed more and more weird techniques, and now he was no longer surprised. Of course, he was still a little surprised. When did Han Fei become a yang spirit? He didn't know if Yi Qianqing could molt in the yang spirit state, so Han Fei shot two god-sealing spears just to test him. Yi Qianqing raised his hand in the Ghost King Dharma body, and a wave of blood qi engraved with blood-colored Tao patterns swept over the god-sealing spear. Puff, puff, the wave was shattered, but only a small part of the god-sealing spear's power was damaged. Huh? Yi Qianqing was a little surprised. What kind of great technique was this? The moment it touched the wave, it almost sealed the blood-colored wave. Bam! Bam! After 3 consecutive waves, Han Fei's god-sealing spear was extinguished by the blood-colored wave. Yi Qianqing let out a weird and crazy laugh. Interesting. I didn't believe that you could fight a peak star transformation realm cultivator. Now it seems that you do have some skills. My Ghost King needs your fiery qi and blood. Ghost Parade. The Ghost King Dharma body's feet flickered with a Tao pattern array, and figures that looked like ferocious monsters appeared. There were meatballs covered with tentacles, bloody shadows that were so ferocious that they looked like broken corpses, and disgusting monsters with sharp fangs that did not seem like living creatures. Han Fei could sense that the ghosts were all soul poisons. This is the Dharmakaya that you are so proud of. Han Fei grinned hideously, and his Dharma idol burst out. Resplendent golden light enveloped Dolong Street, and a 3-kilometer-tall Dharma idol appeared. It covered Yi Qianqing's thick blood and qi with a faint layer of gold. Han Fei's heart stirred, and he grabbed the holy divine light. He wanted to use the divine light to purify the Ghost King Dharma body and the great poison of the 100 Ghosts Parade. But, in the next moment, he suddenly felt inexplicably agitated and excited. The additional 40% increase in power from the Dharma idol further improved Han Fei's strength. Han Fei's huge palm actually grabbed the 100 ghost poison, and under the shocked gazes of the crowd, he grabbed 2 ghost poisons and brought them to his mouth. Chomp! Han Fei's Dharma idol chewed up the ghost poisons like a crispy crab pincer. Ah, even Kong Xian got to his feet. How was it possible? Someone exclaimed, that's impossible. The Ghost King Dharma body ranks 66th on the Sea Realm's Dharma idol list. It was eaten. Someone was appalled. Even if Han Fei has the Dharma idol, so what? How can the Dharma idol born from the fusion of ordinary Dharma bodies compare to the Ghost King Dharma body? Someone was surprised. Han Fei's former Dharma body is definitely not simple. It must be the strongest Dharma body of the savage ancient clans. Otherwise, it's hard to explain. Someone sneered. Does the savage ancient clans have a super Dharma body that surpasses the Ghost King Dharma body? Someone said, not necessarily. Those people in the western wilderness basically survived from the age of gods. God knows what other mysterious Dharma bodies have been passed down. Even Yi Qianqing was horrified at this moment. If Han Fei was only comparable to the Ghost King Dharma body, he wouldn't say anything. He would only think that Han Fei might be a heavenly talent on his level. However, Han Fei took the initiative to eat his 100 Ghosts Parade, which was a bit unbelievable. The 100 Ghosts Parade was the most poisonous of all soul poisons. Was it really okay to eat it like this? As it turned out, Han Fei could eat more than I Qianqing thought. The absolute suppression from the Dharma idol and the 100 Ghosts Parade, Han Fei picked them up one by one and stuffed them into his mouth. In the eyes of others, it was more disgusting. The 100 Ghosts Parade looked ferocious, like aliens. Han Fei kept calling them aliens, which made people feel creeped out, thinking that Han Fei was the alien. The Ghost King Dharma body wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. The Ghost King put his hands together, and a sea of blood appeared behind him. The waves of the sea of blood occupied half of the Fighting Dragon Street before they surged towards Han Fei. After eating a group of ghosts, Han Fei's desire grew stronger. He wanted to swallow the Ghost King Dharma body. However, the waves of the sea of blood did make him feel pressure. Maybe he was not the strongest now and couldn't defeat so many Dharma bodies. So, Han Fei raised his hands and the infinity water appeared. In theory, an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure was no longer useful at this time. However, the infinity water also turned into a wave of blades, occupying the other half of the street. This was not enough. Han Fei activated the apocalyptic divine technique with the infinity water. In an instant, the half of the Fighting Dragon Street where Han Fei was covered in divine brilliance. The scene was ridiculously powerful. Half of the Fighting Dragon Street was blood red, and the other half was golden, emitting a faint holy brilliance. When the two sides clashed, at first, Han Fei was slightly suppressed, but as the brilliance burst out and the waves of blades attacked one after another, gradually, the blood-red waves were suppressed. Only Feng Xingliu shouted, Han Fei, come on. Kill him. Hammer him. Purify him. Feng Xingliu had experienced the apocalyptic divine technique more than once, so he knew what power Han Fei was using. In his eyes, it was obvious that Han Fei was righteous, because he could burst out the power of purification. On the contrary, I Qianqing was evil, very evil. Feng Yu glanced at Feng Xingliu strangely and couldn't help but gasp. Her junior brother suddenly became so strong. How long had he been a star? 400 years. In just over 400 years, he had already become so strong. Feng Yu calculated how long it took her to reach the peak of the apocalyptic divine technique. It took her 900 years. She was at the peak of the sea expansion stage when she was 900 years old, and she stepped into the sky opening stage in less than 1,000 years. It took her a full 900 years to reach the peak of the apocalyptic divine technique. Feng Yu felt that she was already amazing. In the entire Phoenix clan, she was the only one who could do this. However, today she felt the pressure. Han Fei had become so strong in just 400 years. If he was given another 400 years, he might be able to reach the Tao-proving realm. Of course, although she was amazed, Feng Yu also knew that Han Fei was not just using his own power now. He should have borrowed a lot of power. Otherwise, she really couldn't understand why Han Fei, who had just reached the apocalyptic divine technique, could be so strong. The holy sea of blades finally crushed the blood-red waves, revealing the Ghost King Dharma body. When I Qianqing saw that he had lost in both the Sun God and the Dharma body, he naturally wanted to take back the Ghost King Dharma body. However, when he wanted to take back the Dharma body, he felt that the Ghost King Dharma body was out of control. He could feel that the Ghost King Dharma body and Han Fei's Dharma form seemed to have a life-and-death feud. He really wanted to destroy the other party. Little did he know that Han Fei was thinking the same thing now. And Han Fei's idea was even more straightforward, which was to eat it. As for the Dharma form eating the Dharma body, Han Fei felt that this was just a kind of absorption of power. Since he swallowed He Sha's Rakshasa divine body in the Singing Sea last time, the additional power that the Dharma body could exert had reached 40%. Han Fei couldn't help thinking that if he swallowed this Ghost King Dharma body, maybe his Dharma form's power could be increased by 50%. Roar, since I Qianqing couldn't retreat, he could only return his sun god to his body. He wanted to save his Ghost King Dharma body by piercing through Han Fei's body. However, The moment Yi Qianqing's sun god disappeared, Han Fei showed a playful smile. Han Fei put on a playful smile. You can molt infinitely, but I also have my Gemini divine technique. Swish! Han Fei and Yi Qianqing returned to their bodies almost at the same time. However, Han Fei only returned half of his body, which didn't affect his Dharma form's attack. Swish! Yi Qianqing's body broke through the void and charged at Han Fei. But he was shocked to find that Han Fei had also woken up and sneered. When he looked back, he saw that Han Fei's Dharma form had pierced through the blood sea and stabbed into the Ghost King Dharma body. Rip! Squeak! The Ghost King Dharma body was torn to pieces and sent to Han Fei's Dharma form's mouth. A large amount of the Dharma body's original power was swallowed by Han Fei. Pooh! Yi Qianqing instantly bled from his 7 orifices. He was horrified. The Ghost King Dharma body had been destroyed. All the spectators on both sides of Fighting Dragon Street were horrified by this scene. At that moment, they wondered which of the two, Han Fei or Yi Qianqing, was the lunatic. No, to be precise, they were both lunatics, but Han Fei was even crazier than Yi Qianqing. Roar! Han Fei and the Dharma form roared at the same time, their voices crazy. What bullshit heavenly clan! None of them can fight. Chapter 23:35. Under Han Fei's roar, his body and Yang spirit stopped at the same time. But this didn't mean that Han Fei could win, because even without the Ghost King's Dharma, Yi Qianqing still had super strong combat power. His speed, strength, physique, and soul were no weaker than Han Fei's. But the reason why Han Fei shouted that no one in the Heavenly Clan could fight was that the projection had walked through the Jade Stone Bridge. As Han Fei expected, he could indeed walk on Yi Qianqing's Great Path. Although the Great Path he walked on was very shallow, at least he understood what kind of great path it was. When the projection returned and merged into his body, the corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. Han Fei didn't know if there was such an absolutely invincible great path in this world. Even the void stealing technique couldn't do anything to him. Han Fei thought that this great technique must be beyond his understanding, even an emperor-level super technique. But now it seemed that he was overthinking. Han Fei suddenly smiled and said, I heard that you are very good at killing. When the corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up, for some reason, Yi Qianqing had an ominous premonition. Han Fei's smile slowly widened as he watched Yi Qianqing charge at a speed that was too fast for him to resist. It seemed that Yi Qianqing was mocking him for not being able to keep up with him. Han Fei grinned and said in a silent voice, in this world, the soul is forbidden to leave the body. Yi Qianqing was already in front of him, but the next second, he found that his speed was gone. Originally, this was not surprising, because he knew that Han Fei could steal his power. If his speed was gone, he could just shed this layer of skin. But at that moment, Yi Qianqing was horrified. His great path was not working, and he couldn't shed his skin. Bam! Because of the sudden disappearance of speed, Yi Qianqing directly hit the ground, ran all the way from the middle of Fighting Dragon Street, and hit the Fighting Dragon boundary at the end of Fighting Dragon Street. And Han Fei stood at the end of the Fighting Dragon boundary, not moving at all. At that moment, Han Fei's voice sounded in Yi Qianqing's mind, haha, you are bloodthirsty. In fact, it's not that you are really bloodthirsty, but that you have to kill. Every time you kill a person, you can seize their remnant soul and assimilate it into your great Tao. During battle, you can use it as a fake body and switch freely, so I can't catch you at all, right? Buzz. At that moment, Yi Qianqing was horrified. How could he steal his Tao? Absolutely impossible. He had countless layers of skin, so how could he steal his own Tao? Han Fei said with a smile, this is really a very powerful Tao. What I'm curious about is, how many layers of skin can you gain from killing a strong master? To be precise, how many death substitution souls can you refine for yourself? You don't have to tell me, I'll try it myself in the future, hee hee. Yi Qianqing was just about to speak when his consciousness suddenly became a little muddled and confused, as if he had forgotten that he was in the middle of a battle. Yi Qianqing, who had lost the ability to molt, eventually became like an ordinary celestial transformation grand circle cultivator, no longer possessing the ability to be almost unkillable. But Han Fei was different. His hands were burning with immortal spiritual energy. Step by step, he walked unhurriedly to Yi Qianqing, who was temporarily trapped in the chaos. Bang! With a punch, Yi Qianqing was sent flying and slammed into the fighting dragon barrier. Then, in an instant, thousands of fist auras hammered Yi Qianqing's body madly. Dong, dong, dong! Han Fei could tell what it meant to be smashed, what it meant to have one's soul shattered, and what it meant to be crushed in all directions. At this moment, the nouveau riches and heavenly talents on both sides of the fighting dragon street were all horrified. The heavenly race cultivators who were waiting to watch the show all widened their eyes in disbelief. They only saw that Yi Qianqing seemed to have lost all his strength and fell into a daze. Then, Han Fei went up and bombarded Yi Qianqing's divine soul with his fist auras. Bang, 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 dong, dong, dong. Han Fei's invincible fist seal lasted for more than 30 seconds. At this time, Yi Qianqing had been beaten into a pulp. Why didn't he completely turn into powder? That was because Han Fei's fist seal still contained the healing divine light. He didn't want Yi Qianqing to die so easily. He wanted the heavenly race to see what would happen to those who offended him, Han Fei. The dispersing divine soul was caught by Han Fei, and the scattered flesh and blood were gathered by Han Fei. In the eyes of the onlookers, this was simply abnormal. Han Fei didn't want Yi Qianqing to die at all. He was fucking torturing him to death. At this moment, many nouveau riches were a little frightened. He won. Although I don't know how he won, it's clear that he won. Yi Qianqing had actually been defeated. What kind of monster is this? He's too crazy. From the moment he ate the Ghost King's Dharma body, I knew this person was too terrifying. This time, this person is completely against the heavenly race. What do you mean by completely against them? The heavenly race has been losing from the beginning to the end. The heavenly race should be glad that they didn't run into Han Fei in this 10,000-year competition. Otherwise. On the tall building, Kang Xian's pupils constricted. Behind him, the two late-stage star transformation cultivators tensed up. He was too strong. Yi Qianqing, that madman, had actually been killed. What did this mean? It meant that the two late-stage star transformation cultivators might not be Han Fei's match at all in a real life and death battle. All the major casinos on Dolong Street were in an uproar. The odds were too high for Han Fei to lose. 10 times the odds. Many people had thrown their resources into the game, but now they had lost everything. Many nouveau riches threw the tickets in their hands crazily and cursed, "What Yi Qianqing? He's fucking trash. He made me lose half of my assets. Bah, kill him, kill Yi Qianqing, that son of a bitch. I'm done. Give me back my resources." At this time, the biggest winner was none other than the casinos. Oh, and Feng Xingliu and Feng Yu. Feng Xinglu cried out in shock as he held the ticket that he had bet on. It was 420,000 miles worth of resources, which was all he had. At this moment, he was dumbfounded and couldn't help but say, "Am I rich? Am I rich? Ha ha ha, I'm rich." Feng Qingqing said, "Don't be too happy. There's a tax, 10% tax. Also, you bet too little." At this time, Feng Yu said leisurely, "It's a pity that I only brought 500,000 kilometers of resources with me this time. I didn't expect this to happen. What a pity." Feng Xingliu didn't care but said regretfully, "If I hadn't exchanged my qualification token for resources with Han Fei, I would have bet until this Dolong Street casino went bankrupt." Feng Yu laughed. Rumble, in the arena, Han Fei held a mass of soul in one hand. That was the only remnant soul left of Yi Qianqing. Han Fei was a young god and could kill both his body and dharma. Yi Qianqing had suffered countless punches from Han Fei, and his soul had long been broken. If that was all, it would be fine, but in the case of a broken soul, he could only see the divine path. In the end, the last mass of soul was crushed by Han Fei. However, Yi Qianqing didn't know, nor did the spectators, that at the last moment, Han Fei stole Yi Qianqing's great path again. The last time he stole it, Han Fei only understood his great path. But after all, he understood it by creating something out of nothing, and he was only a little bit closer to it. But now, the stolen great path only needed to last for a moment, and he could deduce it again with the green jade stone bridge. By creating something out of nothing again, he could really embark on this path. Above the sky, the great path collapsed. At that moment, countless overlords in the divine capital dynasty were shocked. Because they could tell at a glance that this was the death of a peak star transformation cultivator. As long as he was not an ancient cultivator who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, it meant that he had a good chance of reaching the great perfection of the star transformation realm. Many perceptions swept over, and no one knew what those people were thinking behind these perceptions. Even at the top of the divine capital dynasty, in the royal family, there were emperor-level overlords whose perceptions sank into the Dolong Street. And there was more than one. Han Fei didn't guard against these emperor-level perceptions. In any case, this trip was worth it. If nothing unexpected happened, Feng Xingliu should have made a lot of money, which would be enough to make up for all the resources he lost. Besides, Yi Qianqing was playing the life and death battle dragon ring with him, and he still had a lot of resources on his side. At this moment, Han Fei looked at Kong Xian, and then at the peak star transformation cultivator who was helping him and Yi Qianqing collect resources. At this moment, the winner had been decided, so these two naturally had to give all the resources to Han Fei. When the two small worlds were both absorbed into the source sea, Han Fei looked at Kong Xian with a smile. Me. Thank you for the Dolong Street. If anyone from the heavenly clan comes, call me. Kong Xian didn't speak, but his eyes narrowed even more. After killing Yi Qianqing, Kong Xian's impression of Han Fei's strength rose by several levels. Kong Xian threw the old servant behind him and said, "Go and find out all the information about this person. I want to know when he turned into a star. What other achievements did he have before this?" "Yes, Your Highness." At this moment, the Dolong boundary had been unsealed. Han Fei gave Feng Yu a look. "I want to go into seclusion immediately." Chapter 23:36. In order to show off, Han Fei didn't go with Feng Xingliu and the others but left the Fighting Dragon Street first. This brave operation ended with a small loss in the beginning and a big gain in the end. He killed a peak star condensation cultivator of the Heavenly Clan. When Han Fei arrived at his number 306 yard, he was not afraid of being spied on because of the seal. As soon as he returned to his residence, Han Fei didn't stop at all and immediately entered his natal star. As soon as Han Fei entered the natal star, the Jade Bridge appeared, and Han Fei stepped onto it. Although Yi Qianqing had fallen, the great path that he stole wouldn't last long. Yi Qianqing's great path was almost invincible among all the great paths that Han Fei had seen. If he didn't have the void stealing technique, if he had the Jade Bridge, he wouldn't have been able to kill this person at all. Before, he only understood Yi Qianqing's great path with a little bit of Yi Qianqing's great path, but he didn't really walk on it. Therefore, he couldn't wait to come back, naturally to copy this great path. If he didn't copy this kind of powerful great path, it would be a waste of the Jade Bridge's existence. On the other side, above a certain floating giant city in the divine East Ocean, in the Void Gap, where the Heavenly Clan really lived. Crack, a jade slip of the Heavenly Talent Hall was broken. The powerhouse in charge of guarding this place noticed it immediately, but he didn't care much at first. Although it was a big deal for a Heavenly Talent jade slip to break, it was okay to break one occasionally. After all, the path of cultivation was like this. No one could live to see tomorrow. However, when his perception swept over, his whole body suddenly stiffened, and his body trembled. It's over, what's over?" The guard captain noticed the movement and cast an inquisitive look. However, before the man answered, the guard captain's perception had already swept over. The next moment, the guard captain trembled as if he had seen a ghost, and a thought popped up in his mind. It's over. After a moment. BAM in the old residence of the Heavenly Clan, in a continuous mountain range, suddenly hundreds of mountains collapsed, and the sky was filled with killing intent. Han Fei, I'm going to tear you into pieces. Han Fei didn't know what happened to the Heavenly Clan. All he knew was that Yi Qianqing's path was extremely difficult to walk. It was not because it was difficult to replicate, but because when he crossed the Jade Bridge and tried to replicate this great Tao, he would inexplicably feel a killing intent, a crazy killing intent. As a result, Han Fei revealed his ferocity when he only went down to the 5th floor. He didn't dare to go down the 6th step. This crazy killing intent was something he only felt when he merged with Little Black and Little White. Now that his realm was much higher than Little Black and Little White's, his emotions would not be controlled by Little Black's tyranny. But this road reminded Han Fei of the feeling at the beginning. No. I can't continue down this path. Otherwise, once this great Tao is born, my temperament might change greatly. This isn't my original intention. Standing on the 5th step, Han Fei closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths. He decided not to walk the exact same great Tao as Yi Qianqing. He would only take a portion of it and lead this great Tao in an unknown direction that was completely different from Yi Qianqing's. Han Fei had tried this before. 10,000 Things 3. Back then, the golden page was missing a page, and he had reconstructed 10,000 Things 3 without knowing it at all. Now, the situation was the same. Han Fei just didn't know which great Tao he would follow on Yi Qianqing's path. Because he chose to give up the exact same great Tao as Yi Qianqing, he could only choose a path that even he didn't know. After walking down this step, he didn't know what kind of great Tao he would comprehend. But he was sure that he would never be as bloodthirsty as Yi Qianqing. Because he was walking against Yi Qianqing's great Tao. Phew. Han Fei opened his eyes with a solemn expression. After pausing for a few seconds, he finally took a step. 1 step, 2 steps. When Han Fei walked off the Green Jade Bridge, he suddenly had some weird and wonderful understandings in his head. Huh? Borrow my life? Han Fei had some epiphanies. Yi Qianqing's path was to kill a person, absorb their remnant soul, and then refine these remnant souls into a kind of soul that could be used by the person he killed. When in danger, he could directly attach this wisp of soul to the surface of his body and completely replace himself with that wisp of soul at that moment. Therefore, theoretically speaking, as long as Yi Qianqing killed enough people and refined enough death substitute souls, he would almost never die in the face of people in the same realm or even 1 or 2 realms higher. Because from the understanding of the great Tao that Han Fei had deduced before, killing a strong person in the same realm was enough for Yi Qianqing to obtain many death substitute souls. However, the great Tao that Han Fei had comprehended now was different. This great Tao was based on Yi Qianqing's great Tao. So there was a lot of similarity. They were both killing strong people, but the difference was that he could extract the life and luck of the person he killed and refine it into his own life. If one day, Han Fei encountered an unbeatable strong person, he could use the life he had refined to pay for his own life. No matter if the opponent was an emperor or a god, no matter how strong the opponent's attack was. What they killed could only be the life they had borrowed from others. But because the life was in his own body, if the opponent was too strong, there was no reason that the opponent could only take away the life from him, but not smash his body and soul. Therefore, when that life died, Han Fei would be in a state of invincibility for 3 seconds. This was unreasonable invincibility. He was immune to both energy and body. During these 3 seconds, even a god couldn't destroy him. He would be protected by the power of the great Tao. Unless the opponent's power could directly crush the great Tao. Hiss. Han Fei took a deep breath. Although he couldn't refine countless death substitute souls like Yi Qianqing, he could only borrow a life once. However, this time, he was too strong. Immune to both energy and body, even a god couldn't kill him for 3 seconds. Shoot! Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim. He was too amazed by the power of this great Tao. Of course, In the face of a strong person who could absolutely crush him, it seemed that this kind of immunity to both energy and body was meaningless. The opponent only needed to wait for the 3 seconds to pass, or banish him into the endless void to kill him. But what if he was facing a well-matched strong person? Immunity to both energy and body. If he took advantage of the 3 seconds to attack crazily, he might be able to turn the tide of the battle and win. And now, Han Fei had such an opportunity. Although Yi Qianqing was dead, he still kept his body, mainly because he wanted to use it as an offering to the god of war. Last time, as an offering, he got 5 seconds to use the god of war seal, and that was because he took out that person's star core. This time, Han Fei thought about it. He still had to take out the star core. Otherwise, if he just left the star core there, would the star behemoth discover it and occupy it? Above the sea of stars, Han Fei held Yi Qianqing's remains, fished out the navigator, and quickly pointed in the direction. After a moment, when Han Fei appeared on a natal star, it was the same as last time. He still couldn't use his perception to directly scan Yi Qianqing's natal star. Because his natal star was born with Yi Qianqing's great Tao, it was very repulsive to him, and his perception basically had no effect. Han Fei could only fly around it, and soon confirmed that Yi Qianqing's star was 640,000 kilometers away. There were not many strong people of this level in the entire sea realm, and the quality of his star core was undoubtedly higher than the previous one. However, Yi Qianqing's path to perfection was a bit strange, a bit like the so-called creation of a world. Because his natal star was shrouded in blood qi. This natal star actually gave birth to an extremely powerful fiend. It was the kind of monster that Yi Qianqing used to walk the night of 100 ghosts. It was not weak, and the strongest one had already opened the sky. However, that monster was covered in blood, and its tentacles were all over the ground, like a huge, twisted, ugly worm. But there was only one such worm, and it was in a deep sleep. It didn't seem to be very active. Han Fei had no interest in waking it up, not because he couldn't defeat it, but because it was too disgusting. He'd better leave it to the star behemoth. What if the tortoise was attracted to the green bean? Swish, swish, swish. Using the void descent technique, tens of thousands of projections descended. Han Fei quickly plundered all the external resources of Yi Qianqing's natal star, and then found the star core of this natal star according to the veins of the earth. This time, there was no star behemoth here, mainly because he came too fast. The star behemoth couldn't be faster than him, right? This was a star core with a diameter of more than 1,000 kilometers. It was extremely dense and massive. Han Fei suspected that if this thing was left to burn in the sea of stars, it might still have some energy fluctuations after burning for billions of years. With the South Thearka's reminder, Han Fei knew that the star core could be stored in the Sea of Origin. So, he took out the demon purification pot without hesitation. Compared with the South Thearka's ability to directly extract Great Tao, Han Fei had to rely on the demon purification pot. Otherwise, the Great Tao of this natal star would be endless, and he wouldn't be able to deal with it in a short time. Chapter 23:37. Half a day later. In Han Fei's natal star, another star core that was burning furiously and bursting out infinite energy was added. No matter whose star core it would eventually become a tool to replenish the energy of his natal star. Han Fei didn't care about this natal star for the time being. He still had several things to do now. The first thing was to find the war god to offer sacrifices to. In the Sea of Stars, Han Fei set up the altar, stood on the altar, and shouted, "The great god of war, the belief of the war giants, the eyes of the earth, the ancient waves in the boundless wilderness of the sea realm." Swish. When the fire curtain was burning, the war god replied in an instant, "Did you find another sacrifice?" "Wait, what the hell are the sacrifices you gave me? The amount of the way of the heavens I can absorb is pitifully little. It seems that my natal star is about to die. Did you dig up some old grave?" Han Fei stretched out his hand and replied on the fire curtain, "No, I just dug up his star core. However, Senior War God, I'm really curious. How did you receive the things I offered to you?" The war god replied, "You won't understand even if I tell you. When you become a great emperor and can set up a sacrificial rites, you will understand. Han Fei, then don't look down on me. This time I offered you a peak star transformation realm. It's more than 5 breaths of the war god seal, right? 6 breaths. For the sake of a peak star transformation realm expert. Next time, don't touch his star core. Give me a complete one. Hey, a peak star transformation realm expert. I'll give you more than 100 breaths of the war god seal. Han Fei, so, without the star core, he is worthless. The war god, his natal star is about to die. What do you think it's worth? If it weren't for the fact that he is a peak star transformation realm expert, I would also have 5 breaths. I even gave you one more. Han Fei was speechless. Thank you. Just when Han Fei was about to retreat, the war soul sent another message. Hey! Kid, you are growing a bit too fast, aren't you? I can understand that you killed a peak star transformation realm expert last time. This time, this celestial transformation grand completion, how did you kill him? Han Fei, senior war god, everyone has secrets. War god, ha! He didn't want to know. However, growing too fast was not necessarily a good thing. After completing this step of star conversion, you have to calm down and properly study your path to the stars. Speaking of stardom, Han Fei had something to talk about. Anyway, the god of war also liked to chat. It was probably because he had been lonely for a long time and wanted to chat with someone. Han Fei asked, Senior god of war, what is the path of stars? God of war, You've grown so quickly that I've forgotten that you're a rogue cultivator. The path to stardom. Speaking of which, it was a little complicated. What do you want to do after turning into a star? Build earth veins, give birth to star cores, and then temper my body to build the strongest body that can carry all my power. War god, and then? Han Fei paused. And then, I don't know. Why don't we create a blazing sun and surround it with stars? God of war, huh? You actually said it just like that? Have you ever seen such a combination of stars? Han Fei's heart did a flip. This might be his benefit, right? After all, he was not the soul of this world. However, after thinking about it, it seemed to make sense. The sea realm was too big. If someone wanted to jump out of it and see where the entire sea realm was, how strong would that be? Besides, although the sky was full of stars, the stars were all hanging in the distant sky. Those who had never been to the Sea of Stars or explored the Sea of Stars wouldn't know this kind of galaxy combination. Han Fei's heart did a flip. I have a good friend from the Phoenix clan of the divine land of the South Sea. He told me about it and drew a picture for me. God of war, that's right. But it's not enough for you to know this. Although everyone knows that this is the way to go, it's not easy to really walk this way. What do you think the stars surrounding your natal stars are for? What do you think their purpose is? Han Fei pondered. Shaping the environment to facilitate the creation of worlds. Han Fei felt that maybe this was how the solar system came to be. There were also legends about all kinds of immortals and gods, Pangu creating the world, and so on. If this was all true, didn't it mean that there were only strong masters walking on their own path of stars? Thinking of this, it seemed that the strong masters were quite strong. As early as billions of years ago, they had already begun to walk on the path of stars. Maybe they had already proven their Tao. The god of war sent a string of dots and then said, this may be one of the purposes, but this is something after the path of stars. Some people will choose to create worlds, while others will choose something else. There are all kinds of reasons. In fact, the main purpose is to connect the power of those stars and enhance the fundamental power of the natal stars. Another purpose is to protect one's own natal stars. Han Fei was more and more sure that when all this was laid out, the power of the natal stars would be greatly improved, and correspondingly, the strength of the master would definitely become extremely strong. At this point, the entire path of stars would be completed. At this time, it seemed very simple to create worlds again, right? Han Fei asked, Senior God of War, since I know everything, how can I get the stars? God of War, what do you know? Han Fei, God of War, it is very difficult to prove one's Tao. Most people use their natal stars as the base to find the surrounding stars and bring them back. After slowly transforming, the path of stars will be completed. However, that's what most people do. Han Fei frowned. What about the few people? God of War, have you ever wondered if there are other paths of stars besides the one you mentioned? Han Fei thought for a while. Damn it. I don't know anything. Han Fei, no. God of War, you lack imagination. Even if an ordinary nirvana star is transformed, how can it be transformed into a star comparable to a natal star? Han Fei, with enough resources, it should be possible. At this time, Han Fei didn't need the God of War to say it. Resources. Even if it was transformed by himself, it would still require a huge amount of resources, which were beyond imagination. His own natal star had been almost destroyed. So far, the Earth veins hadn't been shaped, and the star core hadn't been born. If he transformed 8 or 10 of them and brought back a huge body of energy comparable to the scorching sun. Well, even Han Fei didn't know how many resources it would require. Han Fei hurriedly said, Senior God of War, you seem to have other ideas. God of War, ha! Alas! I don't usually tell others about this kind of thing. Han Fei, Senior God of War, as a big shot comparable to a god, you should be more broad-minded. Do you want me to ask the Phoenix Divine Clan and other forces? I'm not familiar with them, but I'm familiar with you. Senior, are you in trouble now? If I'm stronger, I may be able to help you in the future. Hearing Han Fei's words, the God of War was speechless. He knew the Phoenix Divine Clan, which was a big clan that had produced a god, and he had fought side by side with their god. He had seen Han Fei all the way here. Well, it was mainly this kid who talked to him all the way here. And his background was clear. He was also a human. If he didn't have a good relationship with him, why would he have a good relationship with a bird? Immediately, the God of War responded, okay. I don't mind telling you. Let me tell you a secret. You can actually skip the first step of becoming a star in a certain way. Okay. Huh? Han Fei was dumbfounded. Isn't this a path that must be taken? Can you skip it? Han Fei immediately replied, Senior God of War, I'm not well educated. Please don't lie to me. God of War, if it were an ordinary person, they wouldn't be able to skip it. Therefore, they could only look for the Nirvana star and modify it roughly. If they are lucky, or if they are from a big force, they can also enter other people's source C through their life star beads, directly deprive other people's life stars, and transform them. This method also works. But this kind of transformation requires erasing other people's great paths, and the main way to erase is to understand and assimilate other people's great paths. After a long time, other people's life stars will be transformed into their own. This is not something that can be done in 1,000 or even 10,000 years. So, I am quite curious as to how you managed to steal someone's star core and great Tao, turning it into a silent extinction star. Han Fei, it's a secret. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Senior, I have a question. How do you bring back such a big life star? God of War, find it. Leave your own Tao, or use the help of your lover, or dig it back bit by bit through your life star beads. As long as you don't touch the star core at first, you can get it back after going back and forth many times. Of course, there is also a simple way, which is to directly refine the other party's life star. In this way, you can change the star core at will and hold 7 or 8 in one hand. Let me tell you, many people use this method. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Damn it, isn't this cheating? If he had to choose, he would definitely choose cheating. Otherwise, even if he had the navigator, he wouldn't be able to find the void node and drag such a big life star back. Han Fei, Senior God of War, this method sounds very powerful. Then why do you want to skip the star path? How can you skip it? The God of War, it's a good method, but this star path is just a star path that everyone can take. What's special about it? The God of War added, but the way to skip the star path is only suitable for body tempering, and very powerful body tempering. Otherwise, you will most likely die when you reach the Tao. Are you sure your physique is strong enough? Han Fei responded without hesitation. Yes, Han Fei felt that since the God of War didn't like the normal star path, there must be a reason. He was already prepared. If even my physique is not strong enough, who can? The God of War, then just wait and ask me when the time comes. Because before I tell you this secret, I will conduct some simple tests on you during the process of your birth of the star core. I will not tell you this method until I'm sure. If you don't meet this requirement, you'd better find the Nirvana stars and come back. Chapter 23:38. Han Fei wasn't too surprised by the God of War's so-called test. It would not be meaningless to skip this step of the star path. Otherwise, why would the God of War want to skip it? Even if the God of War told him the method, he still had to ask his senior brother and the others. After all, if the star path existed, it should have its meaning. Wouldn't it be a bit disrespectful to the heaven-opening state to skip it casually? After chatting with the God of War for a while, the God of War told him to sacrifice some good stuff next time instead of these leftovers. Then he ended the chat. After the sacrifice, the God of War seal could be activated for 10 seconds. Oh, because when he was on the Fighting Dragon Street, he used 1 second to show the world his identity as a savage ancient clan. Now, only the South Arch knew this secret, but as the strongest rogue cultivator of the divine East Ocean, and the South Thearch's attitude towards him, it seemed that she wouldn't expose his identity. He didn't know why. But Han Fei couldn't care so much now. He still had 2 things to do. First, he had to create an earth vein, and then he had to return it to the origin. Although he had a prediction in his heart, he didn't know whether the two would conflict with each other, so he had to try to find out. In the origin sea, Han Fei sat cross-legged. A huge amount of resources were stuffed into the star sea by him to prevent him from returning them all at once. After reaching the star transformation state, his demand for resources wasn't so strong for the time being. As for creating earth veins, Han Fei thought for a long time. Earth veins were like the meridians of the human body, connected to the location of the star core. Its most basic external manifestation was the spring water of the earth vein. However, earth veins weren't exactly spring water of the earth vein. Earth veins carried luck and fate, and coincided with the operation of the heavenly way. In the natal star, it should also be stored, nourished, and emitted Tao through the star core. Therefore, the method of creating earth veins was divided into 2 kinds, internal and external. If it was external, it was simple. He just had to create a special area to carry the vitality and pulse of this area. Just like the Blood Sea Divine Wood City and the Big Red Trunk Forest. He needed to open up a road to fill the pulse and lead to the star core. Although he had yet to form his own astral core, he had to pass it first. According to the meridian forging method that he obtained from the God of War, the earth veins of his natal star would only end when it could support the entire star's life force. To be specific, the war god asked Han Fei to refer to his own meridians. According to him, you had to make your natal star come alive. Not only did it contain a huge amount of life force, but it also had to spread that huge amount of life force to your natal star. The human body was also divided into primary and secondary arteries. What Han Fei was doing now was to create a secondary vein. Because it was just an experiment, it didn't take a long time to build such an earth vein. Since he was not short of energy and resources, it only took him 3 days to build a slender secondary vein, or rather, it couldn't even be called a secondary vein. Perfect, we can test it now. Another half a day later. When Han Fei's natal star began to tremble slightly, all the resources, creatures, flowers, and trees on the surface that could be returned to the natal star again turned into energy and returned to the natal star itself. However, this time, Han Fei felt that it was a little difficult to return to the original state. Because inside his natal star, there was an astral core that didn't belong to him. Han Fei underestimated the magnificent energy contained in the astral core. He tried to obliterate the energy of the astral core with the power of origin restoration. But at this time, Han Fei found that his art of origin restoration had a limit. This time, the art of origin restoration only consumed 1/10 of the astral core. It wasn't that Han Fei couldn't continue, but that he felt the terrifying energy inside the astral core. When this energy was compressed in the astral core, it didn't feel much, but when he released 1/10 of it under the art of origin restoration, Han Fei felt that if he continued to release it, his natal star would directly explode. Who? When Han Fei woke up from the state of art of origin restoration, he took a deep breath and felt that there was a fairly large earthquake on his natal star. This wasn't just one or two places, it was the entire natal star that was quaking. Fortunately, the magnitude of the earthquake was not high, probably around level 8 or 9. However, this also made Han Fei realize for the first time the terrifying energy contained in the astral core. Last time, when Han Fei turned into a star, he didn't have this feeling. Because it took time to turn into a star, plus acceleration, it took him almost 200 years to turn into a star. Besides, when turning into a star, it required a huge amount of energy. Besides, it was an astral core in the late stage of the star transformation stage, so Han Fei didn't feel that he would lack energy during the whole process. But this time, Han Fei didn't need to turn into a star, nor did he need more than 200 years to absorb the energy of this astral core. Therefore, when he tried to turn the astral core into energy through the state of art of origin and dissipate it throughout his natal star marks, this problem arose. The earthquake continued, and the energy bursting out of the Earth's core was hitting the ground. In this way, it was slowly released and conducted. Han Fei thought that this situation might last for decades before it subsided. Fortunately, his natal star could accelerate time, so it wouldn't take long for him to recover for decades. But Han Fei soon discovered another thing, which was that the earth load that he created was still there. Yes, this earth vein didn't disappear because of the state of art of origin. Not only did it not disappear, but around this earth vein, the magnitude of the earthquake was greatly reduced, and the entire earth vein was full of energy. And this energy was slowly transforming, and part of it was transformed into spring water of the earth vein, and the bottom was faintly guided by the great Tao. Huh? Han Fei was surprised. The god of war asked him to check his meridians before he created the earth vein. If the earth's core was the heart, then the earth vein was the bridge that connected the heart and conducted blood to the whole body through the meridians large and small. In fact, it was the same for the natal star. The reason why his natal star had an earthquake was that he didn't have a good channel to carry the energy bursting out from the astral core. Therefore, Han Fei finally came to a conclusion. Art of origin wouldn't melt the earth vein. Besides, the next time he tried to art of origin, he had to wait until he created a lot of earth veins. Otherwise, the natal star would be shaking crazily like today, and the whole world would shake for decades or even hundreds of years. Unfortunately, in this state, it was not suitable for him to create earth veins. He could only wait for the earthquake of the natal star to subside. Fortunately, he only used about 1/10 of the astral core's energy. Fortunately, he had just turned into a star, and his natal star lacked too much energy supply. The first energy nourishment should be very effective. Otherwise, it might shake for thousands of years or even thousands of years. In the outside world, Han Fei had been in the Life Star City for more than a day, mainly because he went to Yi Qianqing's Life Star and chatted with the god of war for a while, which was why he was delayed for so long. When Han Fei returned, he found that Feng Yu, Feng Xingliu, and Feng Qingcheng were eating hot pot. Feng Yu exclaimed from time to time, "How can someone create something like hot pot?" "It's a sin," Feng Xingliu snorted. "It's a sin, but you're still enjoying it." Feng Yu said, "What do you mean by you? Call me sister. I'm older than you." Feng Xingliu said, "Ha. It's just a few days earlier." Not a few years, but a few days. Feng Yu said, it's still early to burn a stick of incense. Ha! Besides, you're so weak. Feng Xingliu was furious. I'm weak. I broke through the fighting dragon street. How many people can do that? Suddenly, they looked at the place where Han Fei appeared not far away. The moment Han Fei appeared, his first reaction was that he sensed the synchronization of Neza and Zhang Daqian's information. This meant that in the past 2 days, his 2 incarnations had arrived at the same time. Han Fei didn't know what Neza's incarnation had experienced along the way. But Zhang Daqian was left on the crossing by Han Fei. But according to the synchronized memory, Zhang Daqian soon got off the ship and started his hunting career. At the same time, in the residential area where the Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators lived, Neza's incarnation and Zhang Daqian's incarnation also synchronized countless information at the same time. The information exchange between the 3 parties was a very fast thing. Han Fei didn't show any abnormality but looked at Feng Xingliu and the others. Suddenly, Han Fei's face stiffened. He saw a girl with 2 ponytails. Her eyes were as beautiful as water. When she looked at him, his eyes were like rippling waves. Her delicate pink nose was tall but not tall, and there was a little stain from the hot pot on it. Her thin red lips were slightly curled up. Shoot, who is this? Han Fei couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Feng Qingqing. Feng Qingqing smiled lightly, revealing her white and neat little teeth. Brother Han Fei. Chapter 2339. Han Fei wasn't surprised that Feng Qingqing had become prettier. He knew that Feng Qingqing's previous face was fake. Otherwise, Feng Qingqing wouldn't have the nerve to use the name Qingqing. Now that he looked at her, she was indeed devastatingly beautiful. Although cultivators could change their appearance at will. But in fact, many people didn't pursue this. Even if they were female cultivators, they would not change their original appearance. At most, they could keep themselves young forever. If they didn't look good, they could adjust their facial features to make themselves more beautiful. Because they all knew that no matter how they changed, they would always be the same. Male cultivators were even more casual. They didn't care whether they were tall or short, and the higher they were, the less important they were. This was also a part of cultivation, and they valued it very much. When Han Fei saw Feng Qingqing, he praised, "You're so beautiful." Then, there was nothing. Han Fei wasn't Zhang Xuanyu. Besides, he had seen a lot of beautiful women, and Xia Shaochan was as beautiful as Feng Qingqing. Feng Xingliu made room for Han Fei. Han Fei sat down next to the hot pot, picked up a piece of lobster meat, and looked at Feng Xingliu. What do you think? How much did you make this time? Feng Xingliu chuckled. It's really a lot this time. Excluding the 10% tax, I calculated that there are 1.26 million kilometers of resources in total. You won't believe it. It's almost as much as you caught a peak star transformation realm cultivator. Hiss. Han Fei took a deep breath. So much? At this moment, Feng Qingqing said, it's mainly because the odds are high. Those people don't think Brother Han Fei can win. Feng Yu said lightly, I made more than him. Immediately, the hot pot didn't smell good anymore. Han Fei couldn't help but look at them. Didn't we agree that we would each take half? This battle was mainly fought by me. Feng Xingliu didn't care about that. He threw a small world to Han Fei and said, give me a few more balls of medicine. I'm too tired now. Han Fei took the small world and looked at Feng Xingliu in surprise. What? You're not done yet? Feng Xingliu said disdainfully, of course I'm done. Let me consolidate, smack. Feng Yu slapped Feng Xingliu's body, and he immediately cried out, ouch, 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 my injuries haven't healed yet. Feng Yu sneered, ha. Only children will cry in pain. After that, Feng Yu looked at Han Fei and said, his bloodline has awakened for the second time. His body is currently transforming. Any external force exerted on him will cause him extreme pain. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. He took out 3 more balls of liquid divine light and handed them over. He asked with a strange look, "Why are the side effects of your bloodline awakening so severe?" Feng Xinglu said, "It's not a side effect. It's a metamorphosis. When I'm done, I'm not bragging, but my strength will increase by at least 30%. Yes. Definitely." Han Fei echoed casually, but in fact, he said to Feng Yu via voice transmission, "Senior sister, I have a question." Feng Xinglu was chattering. "Han Fei, if you hadn't fought the last match, I would have been the brightest star in the Fighting Dragon Street. What a pity, you should have waited until the 10,000-year grand competition to fight Yi Qianqing. Hey, I don't really understand your fight. Can you explain it to me?" "Shut up. You're so annoying." Feng Yu glanced at Feng Xinglu and put her finger on his arm. "Hey, I'm warning you, don't touch me, don't touch me," Feng Yu snorted. "I have something to talk to Han Fei about. You guys eat here." After that, Feng Yu glanced at Han Fei, and Han Fei stood up. The two of them came to the edge of courtyard 306. Dao patterns appeared under Han Fei's feet, and a complicated soundproof array and breath-concealing array appeared. Seeing this, Feng Xinglu snorted. "Do you think the family will agree to it? Although Han Fei is indeed excellent, I remember that my family has always been at odds with the West Ocean Divine Land. They think the people of the West Ocean Divine Land are too barbaric, tsk. Feng Qingqing said, "What are you thinking?" "I think the friendship between my sister and brother Han Fei is pure." Feng Xinglu said, "You little brat, what do you know?" Hee hee. Hee hee. "Senior sister, I've turned into a star." Feng Yu rolled her eyes at Han Fei. "I know. Little junior brother, is your Tao of Time already very powerful?" Han Fei thought for a moment. He didn't know how powerful it was, but for now, if he used time with all his strength, it shouldn't be weak. It shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with a powerhouse in the same realm. Han Fei nodded slightly. "Not bad. I didn't comprehend it too deeply, but it's enough." Feng Yu understood and then asked, "Little junior brother, what do you want to ask?" "Since I'm here, I'll protect you in the future." Han Fei chuckled. "Don't. Now that the big thing is over, we just have to wait for the major competition of 10,000 years. If a Supreme Emperor of the Heavenly Clan really attacks, it's useless even if you protect me. I still have to ask eldest senior brother to help me, right?" Feng Yu snorted. "Why do you have to go against the Heavenly Clan?" "Little junior brother, although you are indeed talented and have turned into a star in just 400 years, the Heavenly Clan is a big clan after all. However, the Tian clan is, after all, a large clan. Moreover, ever since the establishment of the door to Heavenly Kingdom, they have accepted many proud sons of heaven." Han Fei thought to himself, "I have to provoke the Heavenly Clan whether I want to or not. I still have to think about how to sneak into the Heavenly Clan and get the demon purification pot. Besides, I have to help Chu Hao find the spring of life. Fortunately, these things are not urgent for the time being. I can't release Chu Hao prematurely, let alone help him recover prematurely. After all, I haven't grown up yet, and I don't have the strength and means to fight against an Supreme Emperor. At least, I have to wait until I reach the peak of the star transformation realm before I can consider these things." Han Fei said, "Senior sister, this is my own business. I will handle it myself. My problem now is about the star path." Wait, before Han Fei continued to talk about the star path, Feng Yu couldn't help but look at Han Fei suspiciously. "You don't think the star transformation realm is over, do you?" Han Fei shook his head and said, "It's not over. Isn't the next step to create earth veins and give birth to star cores?" Phew, Feng Yu breathed a sigh of relief. "I thought you didn't know. Since you know that you need to create earth veins and give birth to star cores, why did you jump directly to the star path? Don't tell me. You have already given birth to a star core." Seeing Feng Yu's exaggerated and shocked expression, Han Fei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No, senior sister, although my cultivation speed is relatively fast, it's not that fast. My natal star hasn't been completely stabilized yet. How can I give birth to a star core? Feng Yu patted her chest. That's good. You scared me to death. I thought you were already this monstrous. Han Fei said, I have doubts about the star path. Then, Han Fei told them all his speculations about the star path. He had asked the god of war these questions. Although the god of war liked to chat online, he was not that familiar with him after all. He was more familiar with the Void Temple. Now, Feng Yu happened to be by his side, so it was a good time to ask. Listening to Han Fei's description, Feng Yu couldn't help but say, you know a lot about the star path. Han Fei laughed. Ha! This is related to my experience in the past few decades. I learned about it in an ancient sealed place. It was also at that time that I encountered the people of the Heavenly Clan and had a conflict. Feng Yu's heart trembled slightly. What Han Fei said was actually not a big secret. Even after the star transformation, as long as one stayed in the star transformation realm for a long time, he would come into contact with more people and information, and then he would trace the source to the next step after the star transformation realm. Feng Yu said, what you just said is to find the star path and set up a related system. This is indeed the cultivation path for ordinary people. As for what you said to skip, I have never heard that the star path can be skipped. This is a path that must be taken. How can it be skipped? Han Fei frowned. It seems that senior sister Feng Yu doesn't know much. Suddenly, Feng Yu said, I don't know if it can be skipped. I'll ask senior brother and the others later. But I have to remind you that this may be a mistake. During the star transformation period, you may have to find some star cores and set up a trap for them. But this trap doesn't mean that you have to complete it during the star transformation period. During the whole heaven opening state, before you reach the Tao realm, you have enough time to complete the star path, which is a long and continuous path. In this step, you are just setting the direction of your heaven opening state. Me? Han Fei's eyes lit up. Oh. Is that so? The god of war didn't say this, and Han Fei never thought that the god of war might think that such a trivial matter didn't need to be mentioned at all. He didn't know whether he had forgotten or not. But now hearing Feng Yu's words, Han Fei felt that this kind of normal path was not a big deal. He thought that at this stage of the star path, he must complete the molding of all the star paths. But now it seemed that there was no need at all. Before he reached the Tao realm, he could modify the star cores at any time. Han Fei frowned. Did the god of war deliberately not tell me clearly? Why didn't he tell me clearly? Chapter 2340. After talking to Feng Yu about the path to stardom, Han Fei immediately relaxed a lot. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that the war god did not tell him on purpose. This was not difficult to guess. According to the growth method of the heaven opening realm, one would first transform into a star, then enter the path of stars. After forming an astral core, the next thing he wanted to do was to search for a path to the stars. Compared to the Nirvana star, of course, it was faster and easier to directly kill and seize someone else's natal star. However, when Senior God of War told him that he had to refine the other party's star, he felt that he was still lacking a very important technique. It would be even more ridiculous to use the Nirvana star. If he wanted to build a solar system, who knew how many resources he would need? More importantly, not only did he not know how many resources he would need, he would also think that he had to complete the transformation of the desolation stars during this stage of the path of stars. How much time would that waste? Therefore, the reason why the God of War guided him on purpose and didn't give him an explanation was probably because he wanted him to skip the star path. But why did he skip the stardom step? According to the war god, this seemed to be a better method than directly walking on the path of the stars. He even wanted to test himself after he formed his astral core and before he embarked on his journey to the stars. He was testing whether he could jump or not. Therefore, Han Fei became more and more curious. Why was the war god guiding him? But no matter what, the god of war didn't know that apart from him, he also had the Void Temple as his backing. At that time, when he found out the reason why the war god was guiding him, he would ask eldest senior brother about it. Wouldn't that be fine? Thinking of this, Han Fei felt that his eldest senior brother was full of security. Now that he didn't have to worry about the star path, Han Fei immediately felt at ease. He no longer asked this question, but asked, "Senior sister Feng Yu, you are already the first on the heavenly list. Why do you still want to participate in the grand competition of the East Sea Divine Land?" Feng Yu said matter-of-factly, "Rewards. Why wouldn't I want such a good reward?" Han Fei was dumbfounded. He knew that there were rewards for participating in the competition, but he didn't know what the rewards were. But looking at it now, this reward was probably not simple. To be able to make the heaven rankings number 1, Feng Yu, personally come down to take it, it was definitely something good. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Senior sister, what's the reward?" Feng Yi was astonished, "You don't know?" Han Fei shook his head like a rattle. He knew that participating in the 10,000-year competition would bring him a great fortune, but who knew what that great fortune would be? Zhao Honghuang didn't mention it when they came. He was just a rogue cultivator who had never left the chaotic wasteland before. How would he know that this thing had such a shocking reward? Feng Yi was speechless. "You don't even know what the reward is, and you came?" Han Fei smiled awkwardly. "I know it's an opportunity." Feng Yu stretched out her head at Han Fei and rolled her eyes again and again. Outside, Feng Xingliu and Feng Qingchen gasped. What was going on? Didn't he say he had something to say? Is that all? Want a kiss? Most importantly, the two of you chose a place to scatter it for us to see. Isn't this an eyesore? After rolling her eyes, Feng Yu retracted her head and said, "The rewards this time around, the top 10 will have different rewards. The top 3 will each be rewarded with a piece of starting ground." Hiss. Han Fei gasped. The starting ground? Feng Yi nodded, "Yes. What do you think? Otherwise, why would I come to participate? A piece of starting ground, an undeveloped starting ground, personally given by the great Emperor Dongwu. No one knows its location, so there's no need to worry about others coveting it." Han Fei was dumbfounded. An undeveloped starting ground, given by the great Emperor Dongwu himself? Does the great Emperor Dongwu have any purpose? Feng Yu looked at Han Fei as if he was a fool. "You're quite a smart kid. Why are you so stupid?" Feng Yu smiled and said, "Who doesn't know about the 100,000-year major competition of the Divine Land of the East Sea? Do you think no one from the West Sea Divine Land will come? I can tell you for sure that there will be. But most of them will participate as rogue cultivators. It's a major competition that has caused a sensation in the sea realm. If someone tampered with it, do you think others will let it go?" Han Fei nodded slightly, thinking that it made sense. The great Emperor Dongwu might be very strong, but the South Sea Divine Land must have a peerless great emperor comparable to him. With the strength of the first place on the Phoenix Feather Heavenly List and the influence of the Phoenix God clan in the South Sea Divine Land, it would be difficult for anything to happen. Han Fei couldn't help licking his lips and suddenly said, "Senior sister, even if I give you an undeveloped starting ground, what can it be used for? There may be a lot of resources, but your Phoenix divine race doesn't seem to be short of resources, right?" Feng Yu tilted her head and looked at Han Fei. "It seems that your understanding of the starting ground is not thorough enough." Han Fei. Feng Yu, every starting ground has its own unique will of the heavenly way. The greatest significance of finding a starting ground is not the resources in the starting ground. It's not the origin of the world in the starting ground. But, to absorb the heavenly way of that world and integrate it into the heavenly way of that world. Han Fei. Feng Yu. To put it bluntly, you can use him to prove your Tao. Han Fei's eyes suddenly widened. There's such an ability. A starting ground can be used to prove one's Tao. Feng Yu looked at Han Fei speechlessly. From your words, it seems that the starting ground is not valuable. From the chaotic world to the primeval era, and then to the ancient era, the age of gods, the age of chaos. Until now, God knows how many strong masters have been born. How many of those people proved their Tao by themselves? Many people proved their Tao by relying on the starting ground. Many of them took the heavenly way of the starting ground and then deprived the origin and resources of the world there as the capital to prove their Tao. So, brother, now you know the importance of the starting ground, right? Han Fei couldn't help but think of the countless primitive tombs buried in the chaotic wasteland. If each of them was a starting ground, then how many venerable emperors are there in this world? Han Fei was shocked for a long time before he came back to his senses. He sighed. Senior sister, with a starting ground, can I prove my Tao? Feng Yu shook her head. No, it depends on the quality of the starting ground. But in theory, assimilating the heavenly way there and turning it into your own use can increase the probability of proving your Tao by at least 30%, or even 50%, which is not a big deal. Even if you are lucky and encounter a super strong starting ground, you can continue to increase the probability of proving your Tao. Han Fei asked, if you borrow the heavenly way of a starting ground, will this starting ground be destroyed? Han Fei thought, if I sacrifice trillions of creatures in order to prove my Tao, will I really feel at ease after doing this kind of thing? As if knowing what Han Fei was thinking, Feng Yu immediately said, if you don't die, after you prove your Tao, you can return the power of the heavenly way. Even if you don't return it, the origin of the world in the starting ground will still be there. A new heavenly way will also be born. The only bad thing is that this place may fall into a long-term chaos. But it won't die. Han Fei's eyes lit up after hearing this. He couldn't help licking the corner of his mouth. Although he hadn't even finished turning into a star yet. However, this didn't prevent him from getting the capital to prove his Tao first. As for creating the earth vein, as long as he was given time to cultivate in seclusion, slowly sort out and study it, with the help of time acceleration, it might take a few years, at most 10 years. How could he not be able to do it? Once the earth vein was done, how could he not get some energy by then? At that time, the birth of a star core was also a sure thing. At most 40 to 50 years of cultivation, the star transformation would definitely be completed. Once the star transformation was completely completed, the only step left was the star path. Thinking of this, Han Fei felt that the peak of the star transformation was just around the corner. When he reached the peak of the star transformation, he would be able to bear all of his combat power. At that time, in the Scavenger City and the Primordial City, except for the 10,000 Scales Emperor and the 2 Emperors of the Yin family, he wouldn't be afraid of anyone. With the Void Theft technique, he might be able to challenge the Venerable Emperor. Han Fei didn't think about proving his Tao directly, because to prove his Tao, he had to meet at least one condition. The Scavenger City must be destroyed, and the 10,000 Scales Emperor must be killed. There was no doubt about this. As for the 2 Emperors of the Yin family, he might be able to destroy them after proving his Tao, but the 10,000 Scales clan enslaving the human race was something that he, the human emperor, had to solve. Otherwise, if he couldn't do it, how could he be the emperor of a clan? Han Fei immediately grinned and said, "Oh. Great, this reward is really great." Seeing that Han Fei seemed to have gotten the starting ground, Feng Yu immediately smiled and said, "Hey hey hey. Wake up, don't think that you can get a starting ground so easily. Since the Dongwu Great Emperor has given such a good reward, do you think that I'm the only one fighting for it?" Han Fei couldn't help but say, "What else? You're already the first on the heaven list, could there be?" Suddenly, Han Fei's eyes narrowed. "You mean, there will be divine list powerhouses coming?" Feng Yu nodded slightly. "This is my guess. After all, not all divine list powerhouses have a starting ground. Of course, even if they come, there might only be 1 or 2, definitely not more than 2, and they can only be ranked last. Divine list powerhouses won't be so shameless to fight with ordinary cultivators for rewards." But as she spoke, Feng Yu looked at Han Fei, but there will definitely be a lot of people coming from the heaven list. After all, this is a shortcut to obtain the starting ground, who wouldn't want it? So, you will have a lot of competitors. Heaven list powerhouses are very powerful. But you killed Yi Qianxing, your strength is also enough to move people. If Yi Qianxing hadn't been banned from the Shenzhou competition in Zhonghai, with his strength, he would definitely enter the heaven list. Han Fei grinned and said, who cares, anyway, senior sister and I will definitely have a place in the top 3. Chapter 2341. By the way, senior sister, I'm going to see a few people these 2 days. Who? What are you going to do? Feng Yi discovered that this little junior brother of hers was not an ordinary person who could stir up trouble. He was just an independent cultivator, but he was so bold. He had provoked the door of heaven before turning into a star. He had just turned into a star, but he destroyed the Fighting Dragon Street and killed a peak star condensation cultivator. Feng Yi's intuition told Feng Yi that there was definitely a situation when she went to meet a few people. Han Fei grinned. Senior sister, do you remember I said that I met a powerhouse who seemed to be from the Temple of Time in the Scavenger City? Feng Yu nodded slightly, I remember. I specially looked into it, and there is indeed a scavenger city in the chaotic wasteland that you are currently in. Although there is a venerable sovereign overseeing it, it is a polluted land, and ordinary people would rarely explore the wasteland. Furthermore, the people there seem to be very low-key. Han Fei nodded slightly. The environment there is a bit bad, but it is definitely worse than the outside world. But it is still one of the few dangerous places in the divine land of the East Ocean. During the tidal wave eruption every 100 years, it is almost a dangerous place. However, I don't know why the Temple of Time would visit that place. If the person I know is from the Temple of Time, she may have been there for 10,000 years. I suspect that there is some special secret in the chaotic wasteland. Feng Yu nodded slightly. Hearing Han Fei's words, she also felt that something was wrong. If the person Han Fei knew was from the Temple of Time, why did she stay in that remote place for so long? Feng Yu nodded. I will arrange this matter. I will let you know before the end of the competition. Han Fei grinned. Thank you, senior sister. Han Fei thought to himself, it's good to have a superior. Although the Phoenix Divine Clan is not a super force in the divine land of the East Ocean, it is still a super force, isn't it? If they want to get some information or something, it will definitely be easier for them than me. After expressing this, Han Fei said, there is one more thing. I have made a deal with the person suspected to be from the Temple of Time. On this trip to the Divine Capital Dynasty, I will meet a few people on her behalf. Feng Yu's eyes flashed. You represent her. What is it exactly? Han Fei shook his head slightly. I don't know. Just say her name and take out her token. Feng Yi was speechless. You even made a deal with her? We have to make a deal. She was the only one who saw through my identity. She was a very smart and difficult person to deal with. But Han Fei suddenly said, but I don't think it's very dangerous. I'm more inclined to think that this is a kind of test. Feng Yu couldn't help looking at Han Fei. The entrance test of the Temple of Time. Han Fei nodded slightly. If the other party is really from the Temple of Time, I suspect that this so-called meeting is a test, but not necessarily an entry test. But no matter what, I'll know when I get there. Feng Yu, should we tell eldest senior brother? Not yet. What if they don't have this purpose? I want to see what they want before I decide what to do. But I have to tell senior apprentice sister about this in advance. Whether the other party is from the Temple of Time or not, I will not go to the Temple of Time. Feng Yu smiled and said, that's true. No matter how strong the Time Temple is, how can it be stronger than my Void Temple? You might not be able to see it now, but it's said that you'll be able to see it after you've proven your Tao. In any case, the Void Temple is the strongest. Of course, Han Fei felt that the Void Temple was the strongest. He had analyzed this problem long ago. Among the 3 temples, the Undying Temple should be the weakest in theory. At least in terms of individual combat power, they were definitely not as strong as the Void Temple and the Temple of Time. This was easy to understand because the Undying Temple had a lot of people. If you had so many people, it could only mean that you were strong in group combat and could use crowd tactics. Of course, there must be some powerful Undying among them, but the upper limit of their combat power was definitely not as strong as that of the Void Temple. As for the Temple of Time, they were more like powerhouses wandering in time, and their main talent was not in fighting. For example, Mo Chi was a prophet. This kind of person was more like a wise man. Of course, the combat power of the Temple of Time was definitely not weak. It was just that Han Fei felt that their strength should be due to tricks, not real combat power. But the Void Temple was different. Just look at Feng Yu. She had reached the peak of the star transformation realm and was about to prove her Tao. Furthermore, if one were to look at it in terms of actual cultivation time, he was using time acceleration to cultivate, while Feng Yu was using the natural growth time to cultivate. According to the things that her senior brothers and sisters gave Feng Yu, it could be seen that Feng Yu would prove her Tao very soon. Even Feng Yu was about to prove her Tao. Han Fei thought that all the other senior brothers and sisters were naturally venerable emperors. Especially eldest senior brother. If it weren't for the fact that there were no gods in this world, Han Fei thought that eldest senior brother should be a god. After telling Feng Yu everything, Han Fei was just about to go out for a walk to make his existence known. But unexpectedly, there were guests in his courtyard 306. These guests were actually Wushuang and Wang Beichen. Han Fei thought that they were right. The crossing should have arrived at the Divine Capital Dynasty, so the people on the ship should have already arrived. Feng Yu didn't want to know these people, so she left with Feng Xingliu and Feng Qingcheng, because in the next few days, she had to let Han Fei deal with his own affairs. She still had to pay attention to the test of the Temple of Time. If anything went wrong, she would ask eldest senior brother for help. Feng Xingliu sighed. Alas. I'm having a good time with Han Fei. I don't live in the sky number 2 room. Feng Yu snorted. Shut up. Han Fei is busy these days. Don't hang around there. Also, you just awakened your bloodline for the second time. Go and consolidate your cultivation. Feng Qingqing nodded. Yes, go and consolidate your cultivation. Otherwise, how long will it take for you to catch up with brother Han Fei? Feng Xingliu scoffed. Hey, little girl, are you siding with an outsider now? Didn't Han Fei just give you a divine weapon? Why are you siding with him now? Feng Qingqing said, I'm telling the truth. It has nothing to do with the divine weapon. Although you fought through the fighting Dragon Street, did you forget who helped you when you couldn't fight anymore? When you were halfway through, he had already finished. Feng Xingliu's face immediately darkened. But I fought more fiercely. I was more dazzling. Feng Yu glanced at Feng Qingqing in surprise. Han Fei gave you a divine weapon. What divine weapon is it? What's its quality? Feng Qingqing summoned a lotus seed in her mind. She said, this is a soul-calming lotus seed, a low-quality soul protection divine weapon. But it should be a set. If you collect all of them, you can probably make a set of high-quality divine weapons. But it's very difficult to collect all of them. Feng Yu nodded slightly. Indeed, this kind of lotus seed soul protection divine weapon was not rare, but it was extremely rare to find one in a set. The corners of Feng Yi's mouth curled up slightly. Looks like little junior brother is still very loyal. He gave his sister a divine weapon and helped Feng Xingliu awaken the second time. It seemed that eldest senior brother was right. Little junior brother was very lucky and strong. At Han Fei's residence, Wushuang and Wang Beichen came. Seeing them, Han Fei immediately said, Hey! The crossing is finally here. You two came at the right time. Wushuang smiled faintly, seeming somewhat bashful. The crossrail speed is naturally a bit slow. But as soon as we arrived at the Divine Capital Dynasty, I heard that you fought through the fighting Dragon Street alone and killed Yi Qianqing, a perfected expert of the heavenly race. I didn't expect you to hide a lot of strength. Han Fei laughed. Really? I didn't hide anything. It's just that Yi Qianqing doesn't live up to his name. Wu Shuang sneered inwardly. Doesn't live up to his name? You think I don't know who Yi Qianqing is? Although this guy is not on the heaven list and has been suppressed in the heavenly race. But secretly, he is recognized by many as the strongest expert on the heaven list of the East Sea Divine Continent. Wang Beichen was much more straightforward. He said, I mainly came to see if you're injured. It seems that you're in good condition. I'm looking forward to meeting you in the 10,000-year competition. Han Fei said with a smile, why do we have to fight each other? We have plenty of time to learn from each other. There are so many people in the 10,000-year competition. Ha! Wang Beichen's expression softened. A faint smile appeared on his stiff face. Unlike Wu Shuang, Wang Beichen simply came to see if Han Fei was injured. After all, he knew how dangerous it was to kill Yi Qianqing. He just came to see Han Fei as a friend. That was also the reason why Han Fei and Wang Beichen got along with each other. It was simple. However, Wu Shuang always gave him a mysterious feeling. So, although they were friends on the surface, Han Fei still felt a sense of distance from her. Wu Shuang asked, why don't I see Feng Xingliu and Qingcheng? Aren't they here? Han Fei said, well, Feng Xingliu was indeed seriously injured. He's recovering now. Feng Qingcheng must be watching from the side. Wu Shuang smiled. I heard that Feng Yu, the top expert on the heaven list, is also here. Han Fei said, yes. The top expert on the heaven list is unfathomable. She just sat here for a while and chatted with me for a while. Then she left. Han Fei didn't keep it a secret. Everybody knew that he was on good terms with the Phoenix Divine Clan. With Feng Xingliu and Feng Qingcheng as a guide, it seemed natural for him to get in touch with Feng Yu. Nobody would suspect anything. But if he deliberately avoided them, it would raise the alarm of others. Wu Shuang and the others just chatted for a while and then left. After knowing that they were gone, Han Fei was confused. Wu Shuang didn't seem to have a purpose. She just came to take a look and chatted with him for a while. He couldn't help but wonder if the girl really had no ulterior motives. Chapter 2342. 2 days after the Dolong Street incident. On the 3072nd island, in a cluster of densely packed residential buildings, there was a house that occupied an area of less than 50 square meters with a courtyard of about 50 square meters. A young man who was an advanced hidden fisher was cultivating cross-legged. At the door of the house stood a little girl who was only a beginner hanging fisher, which was too weak in the Divine Capital Dynasty. In the Divine Capital Dynasty, even a teenager who grew up naturally couldn't just be a beginner hanging fisher. At least, he could be a peak-level hanging fisher. Those who were more talented were mostly peak-level hidden fishers or even law enforcers. Therefore, the two youths in the courtyard could only be considered ordinary in terms of aptitude. Buzz, a streak of green light flew over. The two youths' eyes lit up at the same time. The little girl shouted, "Brother is back." The young man, on the other hand, couldn't be agitated. He first calmed down and cultivated, then exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and quickly got up. "Brother, didn't you say that you would be busy recently and might not have the time to come back?" Chen Yi patted the tortoise beneath him and then jumped down. "It's fine. That client of mine is currently in seclusion. I'll just go and check on him once every 12 hours. I'll take advantage of this time to come back and give you something." In the past 2 days, Chen Yi heard that Han Fei was in seclusion, so he didn't disturb him. And the level of Han Fei's residence was too high. As an explorer-level guide, although he had the right to go there, he couldn't stay there forever. Therefore, he could only stay at home. Every 12 hours, he would go up and ask. Most importantly, his task as a guide was not over. Of course, it also depended on whether Han Fei would give them extra remuneration. So, for the past 2 days, he had been wondering if Han Fei had forgotten him. After all, he was just a guide, a guide at the peak of explorer. Moreover, Qin Yi was very cautious. He knew that Han Fei had broken through Dolong Street and knew how terrifying this lord was. However, he was the one who brought him to the Dolong Street. Theoretically speaking, a fight between powerhouses of that level shouldn't affect a small character like him. However, there was nothing wrong with being prepared. Things had already happened. If something happened to him, who would take care of his younger brother and sister? Therefore, in one breath, he took out all the money he had on him and went to the Zhao Trading Center to buy a marrow-changing pill and a meridian-raising pill. They heard Qin Yi say, "Look, what big bro brought back for you." Dang 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 dang. When Qin Yi took out the treasure box that was emitting a dense red mist, the young lady seemed to have understood something. She exclaimed, "This is the meridian-raising pill? Brother, you're crazy. This one costs 40,000 li of resources." The young man also took a deep breath. "Brother, have you used up all the resources you need to break through to the supremacy realm?" Qin Yi laughed and said, "What do the two of you know? How many resources can you use to break through to the honorable realm?" It wasn't like he was breaking through to the monarch realm. Breaking through to the venerable realm was very easy. "Hey, don't panic, I still have something good." Dang 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 dang. After that, when Qin Yi took out another item, he revealed a mysterious smile and said, "Xiao Shu, this is for you." This time, Qin Xiao Shu could recognize what it was from the words on the box. He exclaimed in shock, "Brother, was this the marrow-changing pill?" It's a precious pill used to cleanse the marrow and is even more expensive than the meridian-raising pill. "Brother, you're crazy. Did you use mom and dad's pension?" Chen Ye's gaze sank and his expression turned serious. "Xiao Shu, resources are meant to be used. With this marrow-changing pill, your potential will increase by another level. With the meridian-raising pill, Xiaoya's spirit meridian might increase by another level." Qin Xiaoya shook her head. "Brother, it can't be increased. My innate spirit meridian is damaged. After using 3 meridian-raising pills, it's only a high-grade level 2 spirit meridian. Mom and dad's pension has been used up by me." "Shut up." Chen Ye's gaze turned cold. "If I let you use it, you have to use it. So what if it's a high-grade level 2 spirit meridian? After using this meridian-raising pill, it'll be grade 3. When brother gets a few more, it'll be grade 4, grade 5, grade 6. The young lady's eyes welled up with tears. "Brother, but you should have broken through to the honorable realm long ago." Qin Yi said, "Reaching the honorable realm requires understanding. It's not like you can break through just by eating a pill." After that, Qin Yi looked at Qin Xiao Shu and said, "I'm leaving in 10 hours. Xiao Shu, when I'm away, you have to take good care of your sister. After taking this marrow-changing pill, you should be able to reach the law enforcer realm in less than a year. A law enforcer is already considered an adult, understand?" Qin Xiaoshu nodded slightly. "I know, brother. But don't buy it next time. You have to earn resources to help yourself break through. Only when you break through to the venerable realm will our lives be better." Qin Yi sighed inwardly. In the Divine Capital Dynasty, there was not much difference between a peak-level explorer and a venerable. The point was that he didn't know if he would be implicated. By right, he shouldn't look for Han Fei at this time. Now so many people were paying attention to him. However, Han Fei had said that he would give him a body-refining technique. If it weren't for the heavenly race, this technique would have been in his hands. The damn heavenly race. Now, relying on his identity as a little guide, no one would care about an ant like him, so he dared to continue to look for Han Fei. Whether he succeeded or not, he had to see him again. He had to fight for what he had to fight for. At this moment, a silhouette suddenly appeared in this ordinary-looking and even a little crowded small courtyard. This person appeared behind Qin Yi, but was clearly seen by Qin Xiaoshu and Qin Xiaoya. Brother, huh? Seeing that his brother and sister were all looking behind him, Qin Yi suddenly felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Could it be that those big shots wouldn't even let go of an ant like him? He was ready to go home this time. Until this matter completely faded out of people's sight, he would never go home again. When Qin turned his head back with difficulty, his heart, which had sunk to the bottom of the valley, suddenly relaxed. Master Han Fei. Gulp, Qin was dumbfounded. He never expected that it would be Han Fei who would appear here. Seeing that Qin was dumbfounded, Han Fei said, I heard that in the past 2 days, you went to my place every 6 hours to see me 4 times. This time, I came out not long after you went there, but I didn't see you, so I asked where you lived. Qin hurriedly saluted. Nice to meet you, Master Han Fei. Then Qin said to his brother and sister, come on, greet you, Master Han Fei. Master Han Fei is a super strong master of the heaven-opening state. Qin Xiaoshu was shocked, and Qin Xiaoya was full of curiosity, but they still hurriedly saluted Han Fei. The 3 of them were frightened. Qin didn't know why Han Fei came here. He wondered why such a big shot, a super strong master who could destroy the fighting dragon street, would come to his place. He suspected that Han Fei had other purposes. Qin Xiaoshu and Qin Xiaoya were so shocked because they saw a strong master of the heaven-opening state. Although they all lived in the divine capital dynasty, heaven-opening state experts were not easy to see at their level. They only knew that there were strong masters of the heaven-opening state, but they had never seen one. Han Fei smiled faintly. You are very cautious, but don't worry. I won't break my promise to you. Then, Han Fei gave out a lot of star shells and said, here are the resources within 50,000 kilometers. This is your first reward. Although the transaction with the Zhao Trade Center that you recommended was not completed, at least you have done it. Qin was shocked and took a deep breath. He had just exchanged all the resources of his family for 2 pills, and now there were 50,000 kilometers of resources, which he didn't expect. In fact, he didn't have any hope for these rewards that Han Fei said. Qin Xiaoshu and Qin Xiaoya sucked in a deep breath. 50,000 kilometers worth of resources. That was such a huge amount of resources that they couldn't even imagine. But they knew that such a huge amount of resources should be enough for Qin to cultivate to the peak of the venerable realm, right? Thank you, Master Han Fei. Qin hurriedly saluted again. Han Fei said, you deserve this. Then Han Fei casually threw out a jade slip. This jade slip records a venerable level divine quality body refining technique, which you deserve. However, this jade slip can only be read 3 times. Qin's heart skipped a beat. Venerable level divine quality. He thought that he could accept high-quality ones. If it was an ultra-quality one, it would be the greatest reward. But he never expected that Han Fei's reward was a divine quality one. 3 times, which meant that Han Fei wouldn't allow him to teach this technique to anyone else. But thinking that this was a divine quality technique, Qin's heart trembled. Han Fei didn't care about this and casually threw it to Qin. The latter hurriedly held it in his hand and couldn't even speak. Han Fei didn't even look at the technique that he threw out but looked at Qin Xiaoya and the pill in her hand. Then he looked at Qin Xiaoshu. These 2 boys both had problems with their congenital spiritual heritage, especially Qin Xiaoya. Her problem was much more serious. Her problem was just like Han Fei's congenital damaged meridians. However, the level of her spiritual heritage had been forcibly uprooted, and a lot of medicinal properties had accumulated in the little girl's body, almost turning her into a medicine man. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, how many of these pills has your sister taken? Qin hurriedly said, Master, 4. Han Fei looked at the meridian-raising pill. This pill was not low-grade and should be very valuable. But after hearing what Qin said before, and thinking that Qin's father's comrade was in the Pioneer Sea realm, he must have died. He reckoned that it must have died, and the mother of these 2 children was heavily injured when they were born. Han Fei said, she can't eat anymore. If she eats anymore, she will die. Huh? Qin was horrified and looked at Han Fei in astonishment. He didn't know why people would die if they ate the meridian-raising pill. But he knew that Han Fei was the man who defeated the Fighting Dragon Street and challenged the Heavenly Clan. What he said must be right. Immediately, Qin Yi panicked. His face was pale, and then he looked at Han Fei. Senior Han Fei, please save my sister. I don't want the resources, the great technique, I don't want the great technique. But please save my sister. Han Fei couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Oh. I dare not say that the great technique I give you will let you dominate the venerable realm, but it will be enough to easily make you a heavenly talent. The stronger you are, the more opportunities you will have to access better cultivation techniques, combat skills, and great techniques. Are you sure you don't want them? Brother, shut up. Senior, I can do it myself, but please save my sister. Han Fei grinned and said lightly, you're not bad. Chapter 23:43. At the peak of the explorer stage, there were very few people in the world of cultivation who could give up the greatest opportunity in their lives and give up the divine quality body refining technique. If he hadn't encountered this, he could have ignored it. However, this was only a small matter that was within his power. This little girl's congenital damaged meridians were caused by her lack of vitality and qi. For Han Fei, all he needed to do was to rebuild this little girl's spiritual meridians. It might be a bit difficult for others, but with the apocalyptic divine art, he could completely cure this little girl and give her a good talent. He only needed to consume less than 100 years of vitality. As for Qin Xiaoshu's problem, it was even simpler. He simply lacked qi and blood, and lacked vitality. All he needed to do was replenish a little. Han Fei estimated that it would take him about 100 years of vitality to cure these two people. As for this 100-year lifespan, he could use the void lines to kill anyone and take it back. So he was not stingy. Han Fei stepped on the ground, and the entire courtyard was enveloped by an invisible barrier. Han Fei looked at the little girl and smiled. It will hurt, but the result will be very good. Do you dare to bear it? Qin Xiaoya nodded heavily. She was not afraid of pain. Compared with watching Qin Yi use all the resources of the family to buy her a meridian rising pill, she felt that the pain she endured was nothing. Under the nervous, anxious, and expectant gazes of Qin Yi and Qin Xiaoshu, Han Fei reached out and pressed his hand on Qin Xiaoya's head. The next moment, a golden light burst out, and at that moment, all the meridians in Qin Xiaoya's body collapsed. Ah! From the heart-wrenching roar at the beginning, to the next moment, she couldn't even scream anymore. Qin Ye's heart was shaking. He was still pressing Qin Xiaoshu with one hand to prevent him from doing anything impolite. Although he didn't know why Han Fei said that Qin Xiaoya would die if she took the meridian rising pill, he believed Han Fei. About 100 minutes later, when Qin Xiaoya's spiritual meridians were rebuilt, the power of the meridian rising pill accumulated in her body burst out at this moment. Qin Xiaoya's spiritual meridians began to be rebuilt, and they became level 8 spiritual meridians, only a little bit away from level 9. This was the spiritual meridians that Qin Xiaoya should theoretically have. Qin Xiaoya, who had rebuilt her meridians, passed out, but Han Fei had a strange feeling. Woo! So this was the feeling of channel sculpting? Interesting. Qin Yi and Qin Xiaoshu hurried to Qin Xiaoya. Under Qin Ye's expectant gaze, Han Fei said lightly, level 8 high-quality spiritual heritage is not bad. Buzz! At that time, Qin Yi and Qin Xiaoshu were dumbfounded. Level 8, high grade? Clack! Before the two of them were surprised, Han Fei snapped his fingers and Qin Xiaoshu was enveloped by a white light and passed out. Qin Yi, who didn't know what was going on, quickly looked at Han Fei, only to find that Han Fei had already put his hands behind his back and said, they will wake up in a while. Your brother's qi and blood are weak. He'd better rest for half a year to consolidate his foundation before thinking about becoming a law enforcer. Our fate has come to an end. No one will blame you because of me. You don't have to come to courtyard 306 anymore. Before Qin Yi could express his gratitude, the seals suddenly disappeared, and Han Fei was nowhere to be seen in front of Qin Yi. But even so, Qin Yi still grinned and bowed deeply to the void. Thank you, Senior Han Fei, for giving me a second chance. I will never forget it. Han Fei left quietly. However, even he didn't know that Qin Xiaoya's reshaped spiritual heritage was inexplicably emitting a faint shimmer, which was the vitality in the spiritual heritage and a trace of inexplicable golden light. These two were slightly changing Qin Xiaoya's spiritual heritage until Qin Xiaoya stepped into the 9th grade spiritual heritage in one fell swoop. For Qin Yi, Han Fei's casual help was a great favor that he would never be able to repay in his life. But Han Fei felt that he had just done a trivial thing. In his mind, he was thinking about who he would meet later and how he would talk to them. Han Fei, who had already obtained the map of the Divine Capital Dynasty, easily found the number 1021 island. As soon as he arrived on the number 1021 island, Han Fei felt something was wrong. With his strength after turning into a star, he could easily feel that something subtle had happened on the number 1021 island. For example, he felt that there was a slight Tao of time here, which was only equivalent to an imperceptible repetition of a fallen leaf in the process of falling. For others, they wouldn't pay much attention to this kind of small detail. Here was the great path of time, which didn't have the same effect as a falling leaf. The great path of time here had an effect on the growth of some spiritual plants. This was also the great path of time that Han Fei walked. He felt the Tao of time and then followed the traces to investigate, only to find that there was a slight abnormality here. Otherwise, Han Fei probably wouldn't care. Normal people wouldn't care. In the Divine Capital Dynasty, one's perception couldn't be easily scanned. Otherwise, once detected, they would definitely be held accountable. At that time, even if they were no match for Han Fei, there would naturally be stronger people who would show up. After all, this was the Divine Capital Dynasty. Han Fei could kill Yi Qianqing, which was within the rules, but this didn't mean that Han Fei could be unscrupulous. Therefore, Han Fei just followed one of the abnormal spiritual plants. One of the leaves had a pattern on it that was growing repeatedly. Following this pattern, Han Fei changed his appearance until he came to a place called the Prophecy House. Han Fei couldn't help but sneer. Mo Chi just asked him to come to the number 1021 island of the Divine Capital Dynasty and didn't tell him the location. He said that he would know when he arrived. Now it seemed that there was no way out. Since he was here, Han Fei was naturally ready to get in touch with these people who had mastered the great path of time. Without thinking much, he walked straight in. He didn't know if people like Mo Chi and the others liked this kind of non-mainstream style. When he entered this prophecy house, he saw that there was almost no place to step, and there were all kinds of things everywhere. There were treasure materials, strange tools, various jade slips, information, shells and bones of marine creatures, and many seemingly very old weapons. Anyway, this place was no better than Mo Chi's place. Han Fei moved around in this garbage station that looked like a flea market for a while, and he finally found a relatively clean and spacious place in this rubbish-like garbage dump. The entire area was about 20 square meters. In this 20 square meters, there was an old man sitting on a table, facing the door, and he was looking at a conch shell. The conch shell had almost turned into a fossil, but the old man didn't mind and was still looking at it carefully. In his hand, there was another conch shell, but he didn't seem to want to study it for the time being. Behind the old man, in two other places, a young man was lying on a chair with his eyes closed. However, around him, there were at least 50 jade slips floating. Obviously, although his body didn't move, his brain was moving. There was also a young girl, holding a piece of cloth and wiping the crystal ball in her hand. It was as if she didn't notice someone coming at all. These three people's auras were restrained. Even Han Fei could only faintly feel the collision of the great path and could barely see through their strength. Han Fei walked forward, half of his body almost lying on the table, but these three people still didn't react. Even if this old man was less than half a meter away from him, he didn't react. Han Fei couldn't help shaking his head. He picked up the forearm-long conch shell beside the old man. He looked at the conch shell carefully for a while, and then he looked at the old man, only to find that the old man looked focused, and there seemed to be some strange brilliance in his eyes. Han Fei couldn't help but have a thought. He secretly activated the Great Path of Time, and then found that in his eyes, the conch shell in his hand had a feeling that it was alive. At that moment, he seemed to see the flesh of the conch and a smiling mouth. Huh? Han Fei thought to himself, is this old man tracing the original form of this conch shell? Han Fei hadn't thought of using the Great Path of Time to trace back time. Isn't it my past? Wait, what if I don't go back, but just try to see his past through one thing? Han Fei couldn't help but look at the conch shell in his hand. When the Great Path of Time was secretly activated and gathered in his eyes, when Han Fei's eyes looked at the conch shell, he seemed to see a layer of illusory fog. When the power of his soul gathered and imprinted on the fog, Han Fei seemed to see a kind of illusory scene. He saw a conch, crawling on the bottom of the sea, with hexagonal eyes like antennas and a vertical mouth that gnawed on seaweed. Suddenly, Han Fei saw this crawling conch was picked up by a big black fish, and after swimming for a while, it was thrown into a sea spider's nest. When the sea spider opened the cover of the conch shell with its disdainful hooks, put its thin claws in, and killed the conch. As soon as it took out a little of the conch meat, the big black fish appeared again, picked up the conch again, and began to gnaw on it. Hiss! At this time, Han Fei felt a slight tingling in his soul. But he was curious about what kind of environment it was, so he wanted to take a deeper look. Thus, he saw the conch that had been half-eaten. Its flesh and blood began to heal. Han Fei even felt that he could see the squirming form of its flesh, the changes of its body, and the gathering of power. This conch seemed to have stored its last power in the depths of the conch shell, where there were hundreds of small conches. They were quickly absorbing this energy. At this time, Han Fei felt a little uncomfortable again. Suddenly, he heard the old man say, "Young man, it seems that this is the first time you have traced back time."